Hey guys, thanks for jumping on the podcast. Today we've got Mayor Chris White from Guelph, Eramosa. He's been a longstanding mayor for the last 19 years. He's here to talk to us all about the structure from the province to the county to the municipal level of government, what his job is. We're talking about bylaws, grocery stores, proposed truck stops, corner of 7 and 29, and all the hot topic issues, including building and sewage and all the fun stuff that happens within our township. It was an absolute pleasure. This one's a long one, but it needed to be so we could squeeze all the good stuff in. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I'm curious on what your thoughts are, guys. Thank you and enjoy. Okay, Chris, thanks for jumping on here today. We really appreciate it. One of the reasons why I wanted you here is just to add some clarity with, local township, what's happening in the area, what the structure is of the local township, and how we make decisions, and how that filters up to the provincial level. And then secondly, too, a little bit about yourself, because, I've known you throughout the village as the mayor for years and years and years, but like in terms of personally, I don't really know that much about you. So,
all right.
So thanks for coming on.
Okay.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us where you're coming from.
First of all, thanks for having me. I think this is great. It's a good opportunity to go through some issues and let people know what's going on. I was born and raised in Toronto, down in the beaches. My father's from Toronto. My mother's from Wellsburg, small town down near Lake St. Clair.
Yeah.
I came up here in the late 90s.
Lake St. Clair, that's on the border, isn't it?
Yeah, right on the American border.
Okay, wow.
In the old days when the Canadian dollar was $1.04, as a kid, we used to go across and shop and hide the Beatle albums under our
You could run
seats.
booze back and forth.
Well, my uncle there's a Blue Water Park down there where they used to do that in the 30s. It's all down there.
That's cool.
That is a history thing in its own. So
you still have family there?
Yes.
On the water?
Family. No, well, one cousin's they had a great big, at one point, the family in the 30s had a great big water park, a 10-foot diving board. The big boats used to come in, and I don't know if they were rum running. There was a hotel.
Yeah.
There was a full summer resort. There was a whole thing, and it burned down at one point. And so they hung on to some of the property. So there's one lot left of some of the cousins are still living there. So
cool.
There's some links there. So grew up in Toronto. I went to U of T, studied history, right? And then from there, I worked at IBM for a number of years. I had a company manufacturing textiles. We did some
Your
19
own?
years. Yep. A couple of guys we started. I was going to university and I started a job at IBM so I could borrow some money to start a textile company on the side. And we were doing T-shirts for Special Olympics and Canadian Tire and different things like that. You can't make clothes in Canada at that level, right? It's $5 to sew a shirt. So we did that for a number of years. Then I went into pubs. My family owned some pubs. I was down at St. Clair and Bathurst.
Any still operating?
No.
What was the name of one of them?
Legends.
Legends?
Bathurst and St. Clair ran that for years. Yeah, interesting neighborhood.
So who ran it?
Well, me and my sister's husband was running it with me. Right. Wow. So there was one there, and there was one out in the West End. Yeah. So we did that for about 7-8 years. That's
karaoke the whole bit.
Well, we didn't have karaoke as much, but it was certainly an interesting crowd because it was very diverse. You had Forest Hill on one side, and you had other folks down the other side, a complete economic swath.
And you get a bit of a mixing pot in there.
Yeah, but it was socializing with people, talking to people all day, and it was quite a career. I enjoyed it.
How long did you do that for?
7-8 years.
Did you own it or was it?
Yeah, I owned a piece of it.
Yeah.
And eventually, a friend of mine that I used to work with at IBM was working at J.B. Hunt, which was a transportation company. It's one of the largest, second largest or equal with Schneider's out of the States. And he said, they're coming up to Canada. You want to be a project manager at one of these sites? And I thought the pub thing was, I was getting married, having some kids, and it was getting a little rough in that neighborhood at night. So I just thought probably time to get out of this.
And you were sick of coming home with black eyes and all sorts
of stuff, right?
I
I wasn't. No, I never got. There were certainly risks there, but I was never a threat to anybody. But so it was a bit of a tough haul. So I decided to take that on, and that was in Cambridge. So we moved out this way.
Yeah.
When I was married at the time.
So you had the pub. You had the pub. You did
divested from that.
Yeah.
Came out, started working for J.B. Hunt. I was working. There was a place here, A.G. Simpson. They did bumper manufacturing, but it wasn't really. It was kind of. We were right out of that plant, and at the time they started to do ISO 9000.
Okay.
So I said, hey, you got a couple of accounts here that don't seem to be working. I'll take that on. So they sent me down to Georgia Tech, did a bunch of training down there to finish up the ISO. So we ended up in Rockwood.
Yeah.
So we went through, found the house.
So back up.
Yeah.
You've got you where'd you meet your wife?
At the pub.
Okay.
Actually, yeah.
Oh no, was she working there?
Yes.
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 Oh man.
Yeah.
So like employment standards were a little lax back then, right? Or
I followed all the
all the rules. Yeah.
But that's one of those things when you decide you're getting married and have kids, it's time to maybe step out of that game.
So you met her. She's from Toronto as well.
She's from Windsor.
From Windsor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had some similarities there in terms of Lake St. Clair and all that.
Yeah.
And then your folks, they still were in the beaches in Toronto?
Yeah,
or
my father's still down there. My
Still?
mother had passed.
Okay.
Well, he passed a little while ago. His wife is still down there. My half-sister is still down there.
Okay.
So they're still down there on the bluffs.
So your mom had passed, and then your dad lived in the beaches by himself with his...
Yeah, well, he remarried.
Oh, okay. And then you met your wife, you guys got married, you were still living in Toronto?
Yes.
And then from there...
Moved up here.
Okay.
To Rockwood. And the JB Hunt job, I was flying around the States, so I work from home.
Yeah.
Right, so I lived in Rockwood, get down to Detroit, California, Georgia, Seattle, you name it. I was doing accounts all over. Home Depot, JB, all of those, Target, right?
So when we have people from Toronto move up here, okay, the biggest objection is like there's nothing here. There's nothing to eat. The food is one of the biggest things. So for you, I guess one, what made you move to Rockwood, and then two, what were you thinking at the time?
So a couple of things. Rockwood my wife was a teacher at the time, and she was working for Hitherfield Private School down in Campbelltown. She
retired now, or?
Yeah, we're separated. We separated a number of
Okay.
years ago, but yeah, she's retired now. So she was working in Hitherfield, so she was looking.
That's a nice school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I was in Milwaukee, or Chicago.
Yeah.
She sends me I don't know how we did it in those days. I guess it was a phone call, and said, I found this house in Rockwood. It was on Mackenzie.
Yeah.
So come up and have a look. And I came back that night, and your dad came out and showed me the house at 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night. I thought,
at night?
Yeah. This was 1999. Look at the size of this house, right? Coming out of Toronto, and part of Toronto I was down in the beaches. It became exorbitant, like very expensive, very...
Did you own in Toronto?
Yes, with my sister, we co-bought a home. But when the JB Hunt thing came along, and I thought, we ended up having a couple of kids. I thought I'd like to have a bit bigger of a yard. We weren't making a ton of dough, so I thought you come out, you'd have more opportunity. And since she got this job at Hitherfield, and I could work from home,
like 10 minutes away.
Out we came. So he showed me this house, and I fell in love with it. And so we plunked ourselves down.
What'd you pay for it?
God, $298 or something. The guy before me paid $89,000.
Yeah.
And it had been a double lot.
Yeah.
Back in the '80s, right? So.
So you had kids in Rockwood?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How many? Two kids? Okay.
Yep.
Ages?
So my daughter's 30 now, and she owns a dance studio in Guelph.
Yeah.
Impact Dance across from the Home Depot. She opened that in 22.
Okay.
My son just finished university. He's working for Royal Distributing in IT.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
So
Are they still in Rockwood with you, or?
My son is.
Yeah.
He just finished school this year, and my daughter's in Guelph.
No grandkids? No,
not yet.
Not yet.
We'll see how that goes. Hopeful.
Cool.
That
cool.
would be nice. So where am I now? I'm in Rockwood.
We're in Rockwood. So the opportunity, right? Price, obviously, right?
Right. Great big house. So okay, in terms of the town. So as I mentioned, my mother was from Wallaceburg.
Yeah.
So Wallaceburg is about 10,000 people down in Southern Ontario. I spent all my summers there. So in many ways, I grew up in a summertime small town. So I'm used to it. And I didn't, like Toronto is great, but it was busy. Everything's a lineup. Everything is, you park your car this way, they tow you away. Like it just got, I loved it. I looked at this place and I thought, this is great, right? Maybe it doesn't have all the services that you have in a big city, but geographically, we're so close. You've got Guelph right there. Everything is accessible. The airport's 45 minutes away, right?
Yeah.
So that was not a concern for me. You had all the basic services that you needed. It was a great little town. I thought, this is lovely. Great place to raise kids. Schools, within walking distance.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Conservation area. There's a lot of things I think that people, if you live here and grow up here, it's like anything in life, you and I don't mean take it for granted in a negative way, but
Yeah.
you live in Paris, you never go to the Eiffel Tower, right? When
Yeah.
you come up here and you see a 200-acre cons that looks like Muskoka and
Yeah.
those caves and stuff, it's eye-opening. You just think how wonderful this is. A forest beside the school. In Toronto, in schools, it was all paved asphalt, right?
Concrete.
That's what you grew up with, right?
Yeah.
And then you come to a school, you see a forest, you think, that's perfect for my kid.
And you know what, too? Like, I would agree with you. I do feel like a lot of local residents, and I could say this as myself growing up here, we do take that for granted. Like, the conservation, when people from out of town come to the conservation, that's what they're like, this is great, wow. And we're kind of like, they're like, how often do you come to the beach? Not never, like nobody, so like I've come more now with my boys because they splash around for a couple hours, but I just know a lot of people, like some people walk in it every single day, right? My folks, for one being one of those, but then other people, they're like, yeah, well, and then they don't, and so I always find that interesting. But when I went to school at Ottawa, I remember as like everybody would skate the canal and get a beaver tail and all this stuff, and I never did it, but I always have people asking me, oh, did you ever skate the canal? You were there for however many years.
We're going to do it tomorrow, right?
Yeah, you were there for 10 years while you were getting your degree. So
well, and when you look at that conservation area, it's not just a normal park, right? You've got 455 million year old caves. You've got those potholes.
Yeah.
They actually, the province, as I understand it, just shot some ads from Muskoka in there on the cliffs because it looks like Muskoka.
That's
right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So, but just to finish, so I came up here and then flying around the States doing the JB Hunt thing, and then 9/11 occurred.
Yep.
So they asked me to move to Arkansas permanently because they were trying to consolidate and do that. And I went, you know what, I've got a lot of family. My family was pre-revolutionary in the States. They came up after the Revolution. They fought in the War of 1812. They were at the Battle of the Thames. Yeah. In fact, one of my ancestors, where Harrison ate his dinner in Monrovia that night. So long term, if you do the DNA, I've got a lot of American relatives. So I mean, it's a great place in certain spots. So, but we took a good look at it and we thought it's not for us. So stayed here. A couple of the guys that I used to know, we opened magazines for a while. So I had a magazine in Markham and Unionville. It was Main Street Unionville, trying to take advantage of. People were very proud of their small communities, Oakville, Unionville, Niagara Lake. It never really got off the bound. And while I was doing that, I started watching council here. I took politics in university. I've always been interested. Yeah. It's like a hobby, be the word, something I study like history. And I saw acclamations and I saw people getting in. I thought, why not, right? I'd been here a while, so I put my name in as a councilor and I got into Ward 4 and it went from there, right? And then once I was there, I realized this is one of those jobs. It'll be what you make. Yeah. So as I moved up into the mayor position, you realize that this is a massive puzzle. You can be in municipal politics and just do the local stuff and clear the roads, but when you add up everything that goes on in the community, so I joined a pile of different boards that helped me do the job. So I was on the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is a large municipal group that affected provincial legislation that affected municipalities. I was on the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, again, affect legislation, and you also develop relationships with ministers in that. So the school we have in the South End, part of that was that the city wasn't really working with the school board because they needed a new school in the South End. And I went to Martha Rogers, who was chair of the school board at the time, and I said, I'll do whatever it takes to get a school in the South End. We had 800 people or 700 packed into Centennial. Yeah. They were going to start busing. So I knew the minister and I knew the staff, and I went to them and I said, what about us? And so we ended up getting a deal to get that school in the South End. Yeah. Part of that from being on those boards. So that's the puzzle. I still sit on a thing called Community Futures, which is a federal board where they lend out money for mom and pop businesses. So if you can't get a bank loan or you've got a great idea but you're struggling, we'll do that for you. And we've got many jobs, and there's a few businesses in town that utilize it. And we're not a bank, so that if you're struggling, we'll spread your payments out, we'll mentor you. Little things like that. I sat on GRCA up until just recently. So all of those things fit the puzzle of the. So the point is, once I got in as mayor, I went all the way.
So like I talked about it with Steve, he was on here. And one thing we talked about is the job in its entirety, the pay, okay? you have to have a little charisma and you have to really want to do it, right? Because if you're coming from private sector, magazines and pubs and things like that, and even JB Hunt, the pay is going to be considerably higher, and here it's considerably lower, right? But then you're still putting in those hours of work. So how do you justify that?
Well, so depending on what you're at, I mean, so for lower tier council, the pay is quite low, and I think I've got books from some of the minutes from the Eramosa township from the 1890s, and you can almost read from the minutes. They're going, Bob, it's your turn. You do the reeve this year because I'm not doing it. I did it. It was very much a volunteer position in the old days, but it has morphed over time since amalgamation and a lot of the downloading under the Harris years. Municipalities are doing a lot more than they used to do. Used to be a lot of stuff at the province. So the pay at that lower tier hasn't necessarily kept up. Some of the mayors aren't paid too badly, right?
Yeah.
You're in the 40 range, which isn't great. But if you're a mayor, you're also on county council, which pays 45. So you're into a not a completely bad salary. So it kind of gets up there.
How does that work? You get
private
as
sector.
As a mayor, you get a certain fee, and then if you're on
county council,
you get another fee because you were on GRCA as well, right?
Right, and there's a fee with that. That's not huge, but that's part of that.
But it's still still two jobs.
That's right, but it is two jobs. So you're spreading yourself out. The GRCA's got a 26-member board. We have 38 municipalities in that watershed. That alone could be a very incredibly busy job, right? Depending on if legislation has changed or something's happening or you've got floods. Anytime in these positions, it depends. You're event driven.
Well, and I talked to Steve obviously, and him and I we're always like this, right? I've always played devil's advocate, and I said, well, geez, why don't they get a CEO to come here and run this township? And he says, because they don't give a shit. He said they do not care. If you're not in the community, you don't care. It's more about the dollar. So for him, it was important because he knows that anybody that's on council, right, is there because they want to be there.
That's right. So it's you could still make more money in the private sector, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to be there and you've got to be motivated and you've got to have. Now, I mean, there's different councillors with different motivations, and some are single agenda, or some have an issue that really sticks in their craw, and so they want to get on council to try to adjust those things. But for the most part, the pay's for lower tier councillors and that's pretty low, right? And so you try to get a balance in there, and it's if you did an hour job per hour, it's 24/7. I don't ever shut my phone off.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with everything all the time. And I think that's the job. If you decide to do this, you have to be prepared literally for 2 a.m. calls. You have to be prepared for all kinds of stuff that's not in your wheelhouse. It's in your wheelhouse. Yeah. You got to be available in the shop, in the store. And then, as I say before, it also depends on how hard you want to work. So when I look around, when I was first here, there were some things that were missing that needed another school as an example. I'll give you the medical center. So we had Dr. Hostel was here part-time, kind of living in a garage with a dentist thing on that site. And so that could be something we can just say, that's provincial, that's healthcare, none of my business, right? Yeah. But you can't do that if you're doing this job right. Yeah. So I looked at it, I talked to the family health team, and they said, we could get doctors, but you have to have a medical center because doctors are not going to come to a garage, right? So there's no municipal money for that. There's no provincial money for that. So you have to beat the bushes. So the Frazens, Susan Frazen's family, the Woods, who very philanthropic, and we'd help them with a series of issues. And she came and said, tell you what, we'll build a medical center for you. We'll lease it out for 25 years to cover our costs. We'll maintain reserves for maintenance and that, but we'll do that for 20, and then we'll give it to you. So in 2030, they're going to hand that lock, stock, and barrel. That medical center is given to the township. And we'll just leave it in place.
Whose property is it on?
It's on municipal property.
Oh.
So we own that lot. She built that. The money that was put in from the township was some money from the Rockwood Hydro Fund for the leasehold improvements for the doctors inside the building. Yeah. That wasn't covered. But I mean, that's one of those relationships you build if you're out there doing the job and running it. And so that's one of the things I look. So again, you got to work hard at this and go out and chase those things because they're not easy. Right?
Well, and I always looked at it too, where I see Facebook's becoming, the biggest chatterbox there is, and Rockwood Friends and Neighbors, or friendly Rockwood Friends and Neighbors, and everybody's always like, well, geez, they're not that friendly. But I've seen you comment on that, and I think, geez, Chris, what are you doing? And you'd comment, you'd have all this comment, and you you get these negative comments too as well, which, you know, like for me, I see them all over the place. Like we interview so many people and everybody comments, some of them are negative, but you gotta have some thick skin to just kind of wash those aside and not like comment. But you're actually doing that. Like if that were me, I'd say, listen, this is my personal Facebook page, okay, for my friends and my family. If you need me, call the office and I can get you any information.
You know what? I think you have to deal with the media landscape that's handed to you. So my Facebook, I do not. I've got a page just to get me up on Facebook. I haven't put anything on there in years. I don't really use it. But
there's no dating information or anything like that.
None of that. So Facebook itself, though, it's one of those things when you talk about communication. I actually appreciate it. So a couple of those sites have like 3,500 members, and they're mostly local. A few people constantly comment, but it's one of those areas where there's a rumor in town or something's coming up. I'll wake up on a Sunday and be tagged 8 times because something's happened. It's like, So I have to craft a response that doesn't lead to a whole series of rabbit holes. Yeah. But I think it's a real opportunity to get up there and say, wait a minute, here's the facts. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. You know, here's how it works. I don't tit for tat.
Yeah.
Comments. It's one of those things you learn with experience. I don't think that if they're criticizing me, they're criticizing me for the role I'm in. I don't take it personally. They may or may not know me, and I it's not personal. It's if you choose to do this job, you wear that hat. Yeah. You take the criticism.
And people get frustrated like that, right? Like they hear one side of a story and don't really know the full side either, right?
So it's hard, and so. A lot of the comment, like when they criticize her, I just ignore those. There's nothing I can do with those. I learned early, you try to read what's on there and find what the real question is. Yeah. What are they actually asking? So you go in and you answer that question, and then you get off, right? And so people have an opportunity to know what's going on. And the odd time you'll put something else up, but I think it works. I think people appreciate it.
Takes a lot of time, though, right? Like, anytime you're formulating a response, sometimes I'll do a response, I'm like, oh, this is and then I'm like, forget about it. I'll leave it till tomorrow.
Crafting it, and you get better with time and experience again. But crafting that note again is critical, and you've also got to appreciate and respect that there are some people who just troll, but there are some people who get up there and they have a legitimate question, or they're angry, or they're frustrated, and they get up there, and so you got to try to put yourself in their shoes when the criticisms are coming through. A lot of them are legitimate, a lot of them aren't, but that's Facebook, right? Yeah. And so I was talking to the Warden of Essex the other day, and he said, I got off all my social media about 3 months ago, and my mental health has come back to me because the wave of stuff. In a smaller community, it's not... It used to be worse because you've got admin folks on there, and there was a time a few years ago when it actually was very difficult. And you would have people who were not in the community. Yeah. There are people who sit at home and they troll municipal sites across the province, and they get up and they say, so-and-so's a wiener, right? Start a fight. Yeah. And then the admin figured out that guy lived in St. Thomas, and this other guy was in Tobermory. So they put some parameters around, you got to be from Rockwood or vetted. Mm-hmm. And so that filtered out a lot of that distraction and noise, because it can be useful. So it's hard, and at times and the other thing is there are complex issues I can't answer on Facebook because they can go on and on and on. You could be there forever. That has to be the way I work. Typically, if someone emails me or there's something on Facebook that I think's a little bit, I got to talk to you about this. It's complicated. It's a phone call.
So give me a bit of a civics lesson for anybody out there that doesn't understand the structure of the township and how it works, what your job is, what you're responsible for, all the way up through the county and province.
Okay, so the way it works, so municipalities, as I mentioned before, is a creature of the province. They came out of, so when you first had municipal governance here, it was actually run out of the prisons. Previous to the 1837 rebellion and the Durham report around responsible government, prisons used to do whatever the municipal stuff was. That's why today, the warden of the prison, the head of the county, which is like the regional chair, is still called the warden. The warden. Because it's filtered. Isn't that? I never knew that. I never understood why they would call a regional chair a warden. But that's because, and if you look at where County Wellington initially was, the governor's residence down where the county buildings are today, that's where they used to do the hangings, and that's where the prison guard was, and the court is still attached to the county offices because they were linked. So that's a historical link that's still in existence today.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
So it's changed over time, but the way it's structured today is you've got 7 townships in the county. Okay. So there's Guelph, Eramosa, Erin, Push Lynch, Center Wellington, Minto, Wellington North, Mapleton.
Yeah.
And it's like a region. So you hear the region of Waterloo, the region of Simcoe.
Yeah.
You could call it the region of Wellington County. It's just called a county.
Yeah.
It's a little different. And we're much smaller. We're 110,000, 120,000 people as a total county,
Yeah.
as opposed to some of these regions, which are million. So you've got a county level. So you've got the
And
seven.
the city of Guelph is separate, right?
Not completely. So the city. So if you're what you call a single tier municipality like Toronto, they do absolutely everything in Toronto. In Guelph, they're called a separated city, and it's historical again. Right now, social services are carried out by the county in both the county and the city. We do the service delivery. It's a provincial service, but the county delivers. Ambulance is handled by the city. So the ambulances that are out in the county are run from the city.
Okay.
So there are those historical legislative links, right?
Okay. So
but everything
they
else, but everything else separate.
Okay.
So you've got your 7 lower tier townships, which are the small. So in Guelph Eramosa's case, so we take care of our roads and our bridges and culverts. We take care of the local parks. We take care of fire. That's with us. And items like that. The county takes care of all the county roads and bridges, but they also do a whole bunch of provincial stuff. So they do the OPP, they do the social services, they do the homelessness, all of those things that are provincially driven, or libraries are handled by the county. So the county deals with a different level of governance in the same thing. So when you've got an issue, I mean, Rockwood's a perfect example of governments all over the place. The highway running through it is
MTO.
Is an MTO. It's a provincial highway, and they think it's a highway.
Yeah.
When we were trying to put some sidewalks in years ago, some of them were still asphalt, right? And we thought, well, at least we should have sidewalks. And they said, those are shoulders. It's a highway. I said, it's not a highway. Get off your laptop and come and have a look. You're in the middle of a village.
Yeah.
I know the documents tell you it's a highway. So, right? So that's their view of 7 coming through. So it's difficult to work with that. And people say, well, why don't you just take it over? It's called a connecting link between two highways. The last time they reversed the highway was about $8 million. So the question is, we don't have that level of money, right? Our whole budget, we can talk about that later, is $23 million, including water and wastewater. Prohibitive. Get another bridge. Not to mention the plowing, insurance, and all the other traffic lights. It's a huge expense. So it's inconvenient, but it's not on your property tax, right? Then the other road, 27 heading north, past the whistle stop, that's county. Harris County, right? And then the other are lower tier. So for the average person, you wouldn't know. How would you know? They're not marked differently, right?
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because you call in and you say something. Why don't you put speed bumps on
27?
Yeah, well, even that's difficult. Why don't you put speed bumps on 7?
Yeah.
It's not our highway, and they don't do that, and we can't do that. We can do those on our roads.
Yeah. I'm
trying to work with the county to get them to start thinking about that. Certainly in the small stretches of urban road that the county have. 95-8% of county roads are your side roads, your 80-kilometer rural roads, right? But they've got these little things, the end of Harris Street, the end of 27 coming in, right? You could probably hand them to, it's this, you got to remember this stuff's developed over the last 150 years, right? There's a lot of baggage in the way things are structured. Anyway, so you've got as I say, you've got the lower tier dealing with that, and you've got the county dealing with those issues. So, and the county also deals with solid waste.
Okay.
Garbage pickup, blue box, and there's a bunch of things there that are changing. Blue boxes, for example, as of July this year, were taken over by the producers. Okay. There was a thought that the producers who produce plastic and recyclables should pay, not property tax. So the idea was they would take over the service, you pull it off the property tax, and then the producers take care of it. But
and then you give us a tax break.
No. So here's how this works. No, but let me explain. That sounds what it sounds like, right? But if you actually look at it, here's what happens. At the end of the day, they pull all the recycling from business. Okay. So the downtowns here, there's 14 downtowns in the county.
Okay.
They would have lost all their recycling. They would have had to hire private sector people to deal with it or deal with it themselves. Okay. And I was at county and with the councillor in Aaron, Jeff Duncan, we said, this is not how to treat the small businesses, right? They provide the services, they pay the bills, they pay more money than residential people, and they provide the jobs. They're the backbone of the community. Yeah. They're the last people we should be adding an administrative burden to or Now on Sundays, I got to figure out what to do with my cardboard because this new provincial legislation has moved the recycling, and they're only doing residential. So some of the money we've saved, we're now putting back into providing that services in those 14 townships, and you'll see the new green and yellow bins.
Have they? Yeah, like the bins. I was going to say that. So they're converting to the bins now.
That's right, because that's the producers are taking that over. And then
But garbage isn't.
Garbage is going to, no, but garbage is going to, so the garbage contract, which is still handled by the county, which is garbage and organics, is changing as well. Come 2027, 2028, we're in negotiations for a new contract, and everybody's going to the bins.
Yeah.
And for labor reasons, because you get guy on and off the truck and all kinds. So there will be shifts and changes, right?
Good.
So people get frustrated with that, and so that's a county service, right?
So for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So what are you doing on a daily basis as a mayor?
So there's a series of meetings as a mayor you're dealing with all over the place, right? So whether I'm at Community Futures or up at the township office or having a heritage meeting or having a budget meeting or, meeting a resident on things. If you look at my calendar, it's back to back. And then you add county into that and some of the other things that I sit on that are municipal related, it's full time.
Yeah.
Right. The county, for example, has a meeting schedule. We have committee weeks back to back to back to back, 6 different committees, right?
So then as a mayor, right, what are you responsible for? Like we have, you have your parks and recs, right? You have your zoning department.
Yeah.
And then of course you have you've got plows up there. What, like that type of stuff on the day-to-day basis is the CAO is responsible for.
So the way the governance works is, and this is the same at the county and everywhere else, elected council's job is to implement policy and pass legislation for a word. We want a new fence bylaw, let's just say, okay? We've decided we don't have one, let's get one. That's up to council to take information from staff, of course, to walk through how you would do that. And then we pass that and we say, okay, here's the fence bylaw. We then have staff implement that. So, maybe go back to plowing. So let's say we're looking at, okay, here's a better one. We're talking about sidewalk plowing.
Yeah.
When you're looking at sidewalk plowing, council's made a decision, and it's not mandatory. You're not required to plow sidewalks under any legislation. You just do it because it's a good service, right? Or you don't.
Yeah.
Some places don't. Places like Toronto will only plow main roads or sidewalks. You have to
and the residents is responsible
fix
for
the.
it.
So depending on the Guelph debates that every once in a while, let's pull the plows. That service has been here since I've been here. I think it's a good service. It's good for everybody, in my opinion. But so council makes a decision to budget and buy plows. Council makes a decision to say to staff, plow the routes, right? Council can maybe intervene a little bit to say, let's make school routes a priority because that's in the morning. Kids are trying to get to school. So don't just start up there and plow the school routes and then go back to the side streets, right? So we'll give that direction, but then staff implement.
Okay.
So they've got to go out and plow the sidewalks and, all of those things. And if there's difficulties with the equipment or whatever, that's dealt with internally unless they need something that's budget or council steps up. So we pass basically how you do things, what the rules are and what the service levels are. They implement it, right?
Okay.
And the way the staff work is
but you don't have any say in the implementation.
You do, no, but we're never excluded. So it's a partnership. The way council works is staff and council are a partnership.
Because they don't like I wouldn't necessarily say they work like, hey, the mayor's sitting up there on his throne. They don't necessarily work for you.
They do not work for me. They work for. So the way it's.
How do we change that?
Well, no,
How do we get them to work for you?
in the. Well, no, they. So let me. I'll walk you through what the legislation is and then what the reality is. So at the end of the day, you've got council, which does. As I've mentioned before, pass budgets, does legislation, deals with different things that are coming down the pipe. Staff implement what they're doing. Staff themselves have a CAO at the top.
Yeah.
Right? He's the top admin person, he or she, top person. That's our only employee for council. Council, that's the person that we hire directly and that reports back to us directly. It's full-time.
But what's the contract? How many years?
It's full-time. It could be forever.
Oh, really?
Right. You could have some people bring CAOs on contract. Sometimes they're at the end of their career. CAOs are a very difficult position to fill. They're really high skilled. The demands are there. And also some of it's size. You get people who are in a huge municipality or in their last 5 years, they want to go smaller, right? Because they get a smaller town. So, but they've got full responsibility. And then under the CAO will be department heads or directors, director of public works, director of parks, that report to him, and then under there is the various other staff, right? Okay. Now, what they're doing and how they're functioning and the service levels and that are absolutely an interest of council and a direct response. We're not disconnected from it, but I can't go to a plow guy and say, hey, Bob, go back and plow that road over there. That's completely inappropriate. I am not. Well, I've known councilors. There was a guy who was a new councilor up in Mapleton. He's standing in a hole in the road one day telling the construction crew how they should be digging the hole.
Yeah. So you're independent.
Who is?
You're independent from the day-to-day.
Well, you are, but so where I was going to get to, though, when people call and complain and have an issue with the service,
they phone you.
Yeah, which is how it works, is I'm representing them.
Okay.
But there's different ways to put complaints in. So one of them is me. They reach out to me or your counselor and they say, my blue box disappeared. I don't know what the complaint is. My sidewalk didn't get plowed.
Yeah.
Let's just use that. So they can call me, and then I would go up to staff and say what happened today, plow broke down or whatever, and I would feed that information back. If there's chronic issues with stuff like that, we absolutely engage with operations and say we need to fix this, right?
Yeah.
But how they operate day to day is, these are professionals, right? We've hired engineers and planners and all the people who go to school for a long time and get degrees and are professionals in their field, and you defer to them most of the time because that's why you've hired them, because they have the expertise, right?
Yeah.
But if the public is not getting the service level they expect or they don't understand something, they can filter through us and we will go ask the township. The other way, of course, is we have again, we're legislated to death. There's a whole set of rules around complaints that the province brought out. If you want to complain about something, you get a hold of and I'm not talking about my sidewalk didn't get plowed today. Let's say there's a bylaw complaint. My neighbor's front lawn looks like
crap.
Flint. Okay?
Yeah.
You have to get a hold of the township. It's anonymous, but you have to fill out a complaint. There's a proper form you fill out explaining what it is and where it is. And in bylaw, we'll take that over. Now, the person who's made the complaint is now out of the loop because this is now between the township and the person who's got the stuff on their yard.
Yeah.
And it's now almost legal, right? The bylaw officer, I cannot direct him because they're quasi-police. Yeah. It's the same with the OPP. I can't go to an OPP, even though I'm on the police services board, and say, I want you to put your cruiser and sit over here. I can go to them and say, hey, I've got speeding issues there, and we need some resources there. Can you help me out? But I can't direct them. Okay. I can't tell a bylaw officer, don't give them that parking ticket. Don't enforce that. You need a fence around that pool. That's legislative. I can't tell them not to do that. Mm-hmm. And you're breaking, we have bylaws. You actually swear an oath.
So the bylaw is but the bylaws are still municipal bylaws.
But they're driven by a couple of things, mostly out of provincial legislation and standards, right?
Yeah.
It's common. Most municipalities almost have the same bylaws across the board. There are nuances.
Yeah.
You may have subtle change, and some of them operate differently. So Guelph, I don't know the number exactly. I think they got about 25 bylaw officers. Yeah. And part of what larger urban centers do, they drive around looking for stuff.
Yeah.
I see this, I see that, and then boom, they file a complaint. We don't do that. We're trying to stay small, laissez-faire, live and let live. Let people get on. If they see a safety issue, they've got to step up. If township staff see a safety issue, someone puts a bunch of rocks at the front of their lawn that are decorative, right? Yeah. But they get kicked off onto the sidewalk. The plow comes along, hits that rock, and bang, hits somebody. We then have to form a complaint and get those rocks moved back.
So it's complaint-driven.
Complaint-driven, unless we see a safety issue, right? And some people use it for lawfare. Some neighbors don't get on. A lot of this stuff is neighbors not getting on with neighbors, right?
Yeah.
And they'll call bylaw. But bylaw is independent. I cannot direct them how to go. But if someone calls me and says, I've got an issue with a member of your staff, let's go with that.
Okay.
What's his name? Came to my house to trim the tree on my boulevard, and I don't like what they did or how they behaved or what they communicated. That can go back through who he reports to, staff, and up to the CAO for direction. But if I'm getting calls and complaints on it, I'm going to tell the CAO.
Do you, so with the bylaw too, like you mentioned, police and bylaw, but I think a lot of bylaw officers think they are police sometimes, and I think that a lot of people, I think you and I before this we were talking communication yep. with the public. Like the most arguments start because of miscommunication. Right. So with the bylaw, what's their I guess how much authority do they have? Can the bylaw officer come on your property unannounced, not knock on the door, walk right in your backyard, even though it's private property? Yes, and I'll tell you, I didn't actually know that up until about 2 years ago, and I found that shocking. Yeah, I thought, how again, the way you got to, if you step back a little bit of how all these rules and laws get formed over time, right? They're there theoretically to keep civility. And what happens is some people aren't civil. But even police officers can't even, go in without a warrant. Well, I don't know about backyards. So they can't go into your home. So let's be clear on that. But what I was trying to say is that a lot of things have happened over time
that the rules develop that way, right? So
Yeah.
bad actors, bad players. You know, if you had a perfectly civil society and everybody was well behaved, you wouldn't need half the rules.
Rockwood's not like that?
Well, no, we don't use most of the rules. We don't need them. So we have an area. So someone's got a complaint that there's stuff in the backyard that's attracted rats.
Yeah.
And it's all over the yard, and they're infesting my home.
Yeah.
So he goes to the door, and the person's not home. Mm-hmm. He's going to look. Yeah. He's going to go around and look because it's a clear and present danger, theoretically, right? But he's not going. That's what the provincial legislation allows. Again,
but if it's a fence bylaw, like what if it's not clear and present danger?
Well, I'm not saying it has to be. He has legislative authority to go onto property.
So he's allowed, and the homeowner can't say anything about it. The homeowner can't say, no, I don't want you on my property.
Well, I mean, if you had that confrontation and he asked them not to go or come back, that's probably there. Again,
so like what
we
right
deal with.
does the
Listen,
homeowner
we deal
have?
with a complete scale. You get homeowners who don't want you on their property, homeowners who can be violent, homeowners who have weapons.
Because you got private property, right?
Right. And so I'm with you in the shock of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, my direction, although I can't, let me, the philosophy that we generally have is leave people alone. And if you don't need to go onto their backyard for just, a guy's play set got knocked over, well, don't. Like if there's something that you really feel you need to look because you can't reach them, he has the full authority to do that under the legislation. Again, I'm surprised. Yeah, I'm not really supportive of that.
Because I always look at it where, like, you know, if I've got a pool, I've got kids playing in the pool, and I have some random guy comes into the house. I mean, mind you, he's probably in uniform and all that stuff. I would be, like, to me, my first instinct, right, is like, you don't get the heck out of here.
He's not just going to show up on your property without trying to engage you at the front door first. They're going to try to reach you first. He just doesn't walk on the property. He's going to knock and see if he can get you. That's a perfect example. We get a complaint that someone put a pool in and there's no fence around it. Yeah. And I've got 3 kids, 2 doors down, who could drown in that pool. Mm-hmm. So the bylaw shows up, can't reach anybody in the home at that particular time. He's going to go have a look.
Yeah.
And by fluke, you might be the guy in the backyard who didn't hear him knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And you say, what are you doing here? Well, your pool has no fence. And that's legitimate.
Yeah.
Right? Because that guy's worried about his kids drowning in the pool. Now, look, it's a tough job. Some of these folks want it to be in the pool. Who knows what career paths particular people want to do. Yeah. But quite often, they're not walking into pleasant situations typically. You're walking into something where there's already
I couldn't imagine anything they're doing is what, because it's all complaint based and it's bylaw. Like right. You know, so they're there. They're not there to tell you like, hey, you did a good job putting up this fence. Anything that they do is going to be has to have some degree of confrontation, right?
Exactly. And it's always, so we've got, one of the things that bylaw are asking for more and more now, I realize he's got the full uniform and the camera. Now that sounds large, urban, and, you know, bizarre, but, you know, just as a sidebar, they lock Centennial School now, right? You can't get in there. They lock it during the day. Things have changed and shifted, right? Yeah. The camera is on for it protects both.
Sure.
So the resident is protected from the whatever and he's protected from because there's been multiple occasions where he'll go somewhere and then we'll get a call back and somebody will say, oh, he was bullying at the door and he was yelling and screaming and he did all and you play the tape and it's no.
Yeah.
But some of it's interpersonal, right? Depending on how
because the bylaw officer is new to Rockwood, right?
Like, he came out of Vaughan, so he's trained. So there's.
But I'm just saying that position, right? So there is going to be this like there has to be some sort of transitional area which is going to be difficult, and I think a lot of people for me when I look at that I think okay, you know, bylaw and there's going to be more fines and more BS and we got along fine without the bylaw officer, so now we got it and then
we didn't. What was happening is, and as Rockwood grew, you got to remember the town's grown 8, 10, 20. Like
of course.
Full end subdivisions built from.
So like, what's the full population of the town?
6,000, 5,500, 6,000 in that range. But all I was going to say is we used to have a part-time bylaw officer, right? We did. We've always had one. Mm-hmm. He was part-time. And we couldn't get to a pile of stuff because the amount of stuff that's come in. And as you urbanize and you get more urban levels of expectations of services, he gets calls all the time. Yeah. He's out busy all the time based on complaints. And that's just an indication of a growing population and a bit of urbanization. So some of the old... the bylaw guy used to be Fred down the street has changed now. And it's now, a lot of it's legislative, and the bylaw officer is legal. So if I have a confrontation with you over something, we could end up in court. There's an important thing. So
Yeah.
The personality matters and how you approach people, and there's training on that. And
Yeah,
I've
of
worked
course.
on those issues and tried to say, you're walking. The people at the other end of this aren't happy either. They're being part of it. So you got to be empathetic. But at the end of the day, he has some discretion, but there are laws and stuff that he has to.
So then,
enforce.
what about like the administrative monetary policies? So like, what about those? Like, because a lot of townships are adopting those in lieu of some of the bylaw support, so they can just find like the speed cameras are an administrative monetary policy.
I'll cover them in a minute.
Yeah,
Let's cover the bylaw end of it. We're not. This isn't a moneymaker for us. Bylaw going out and finding people isn't a moneymaker.
So where does the money go?
It goes to the township, but it's not big dollars, right? A lot of that goes into court costs.
Does it pay for the bylaw?
Not completely. No. But you have to have it, right? You've got to have. You're not going to. So when you're doing building inspections,
Yes.
right? And they're providing a service to someone who's gaining a benefit.
Yes.
Those fees are designed to make that department self-sufficient. That doesn't come from taxes. It pays for itself.
Yeah.
Bylaw, on the other hand, say you get no complaints for 3 months. Like it can't be driven based on the number of tickets. And in an ideal scenario, you're not issuing tickets.
Like he doesn't have a quota.
Absolutely not. His job is to respond to complaints that come in. Some of it's discretionary, some of it's black and white. But the way it works is he'll show up and say, Tyler, you got to get that stuff off your lawn.
Yeah.
Okay? I'll give you 30 days. Right? He comes back 30 days later, it hasn't moved. I was sick. I lost my. Can you give? So there's discretion to move it down. We've had cases.
And he has the discretion. He has the authority to have his own discretion. Okay.
But there's another part of this equation. Somebody's put that complaint in. So we pass a bylaw that says you can't have junk on your front lawn.
Yeah.
People expect us to enforce that.
Yes.
So I'm a neighbor across the street. There's junk on that front lawn and it's sitting there. So we show up and we give the guy some discretion, let's say, or the lady to take the stuff off. We don't report back out to the original complainant because now it's between the township and the applicant and that could end up in court. But they can see the stuff sitting on the lawn. Yeah. And they may call back and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're not enforcing our bylaws. To situations we've had where this person threatens to sue us because we're not forcing that person to clean that stuff up quick enough to their liking. They can sue us for not enforcing our own bylaws. That's absolutely true. So if we pass a bylaw, we're obliged to enforce it. If there's a complaint comes through, that they can sue us for not.
But it hasn't happened.
No, but they can, and that's in the room. What I'm trying to say is there's always two sides to this story. The guy with the stuff on his lawn, the person who wanted it moved. We have to operate in between them. You want to get the stuff moved, right? But you want to give them a reasonable window.
But if someone's going to sue you for that, they've got to. That's their time in court. They've got to pay for that.
Yeah, but a resident shouldn't have to reach the point where they're suing us to enforce our bylaws.
No.
If we have a bylaw, you can't have junk on your lawn. You shouldn't have junk on your lawn.
And I'm in agreement with that. Like I don't think I think having a car with no wheels on it parked in someone's front lawn, right? To me, I think it pulls the property values down for anybody. So I would agree with that stuff.
But here's what happens. And we had this in Everton. So we go on. People assume once a bylaw guy shows up that we can enforce something. You can't. We can give them an order and say, you need to clean that up within 30 days. It may give a little discretion. Let's say it gets to 60 days. We can then put in a ticket. But we still can't force them to clean that up at this point because they haven't been convicted of the offense. What'll happen is if they don't clean it up, we'll take them to court then. We'll say, you're not... We had one that must have gone on 3 or 4 years because every time it showed up, the guy changed his lawyer, the judge deferred it. You can have property bylaws, standards bylaws that go on in court for years. And we can't, but if we reach the point where the judge says, okay, I convict you of having junk on your lawn, you are now guilty. So now the OPP can go on or a bylaw can go and enforce the act to clean that up, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't, we can do it and put it on their property tax.
So then that kind of segues into the administrative monetary.
So the administrative the rationale behind that is
because then you don't have that 3 years. You can do it right away. You can find them right away.
So depending on how there's going to be some iterations to that. Some of it's around some of the stuff that the police do, and some townships are. Push I believe if your car's parked illegally, the OPP can give it a ticket right now.
Yeah.
They're going to pull that as part of the AMP stuff.
Yeah.
We're not because our guy's not here on the weekends. So you're going to pull sections of the AMP back through. But it's twofold. One, the idea behind being able to, and so if we visit a site one time, that's kind of free. If we have to visit twice, that's fine. After that, we're going to start billing you for us having to constantly return because you're using taxpayer-funded services that you're not getting along with. Now, the idea of being able to lay some charges at the AMP is to avoid these 3 and 4 year court cases. They get tied into the court system, right?
Yeah, and I think for me, I can understand that, right, to try to like reduce costs and all that. But for the amount of time you would have people do, like, go through it for 3 years, it's an isolated case. Most people, you ask them to do something, they're going to do it. But I find, like, with the AMP, it doesn't give somebody the authority. Like, it gives almost the township too much authority where somebody doesn't get their chance to actually fight it. And to me, I think we pay the taxes to be able to, have your bylaw. If we have to pay for a bylaw officer, right, then we should be able to, disagree with what's happening and be able to fight that and have our day in court.
Right. So we haven't implemented that yet.
No, and I'm just.
That's absolutely a legitimate. So when this is part of what goes on.
But it's happening with most townships. Like, that's right. Most townships are adopting these to kind of say, no, screw this. We're gonna do, like. I mean, you see it a lot with short-term rentals and things like that. But what happens is it just takes away anybody's opportunity to protest it and say, well, no, I disagree with that bylaw. If I'm reading it here, I'm actually allowed to have, if the car has all four wheels on it, it's considered, drivable or whatever it is.
I would absolutely, look, our goal isn't to go out and sue our residents and do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a system that's working. And there have been enough cases where we can't get through the courts quick enough that neighbors are constantly wondering, why do I have to live with this year after year?
Yeah.
It may be isolated, but it is there. So we're looking at the AMP right now, but we haven't decided exactly what piece or how we're going to implement this. The goal, I'm with you. I don't want anybody not to have an opportunity to be able to defend their position.
Yeah.
But if you've got a scenario where the people are not cooperating at all, throwing it into the court may drag it out for years. It may be just time to bring that forward.
Well, and I guess it depends on what it is. But what happens is, I guess, when you take that kind of authority, there's room for that to be abused. And you say, okay, well, cars on the front lawn, now we're going to do it for fence heights. And if I go in there, because realistically, if you adopt the AMP program or whatever, however you classify it, you could do that with every single bylaw that you have, right? Like, I
don't know that's true. I don't know what the AMP covers.
Yeah,
there's going to be some constraints around it.
You can, as long as it's voted.
Well,
right?
The AMP doesn't come out of ether. It's going to be part of provincial legislation allowing you to do this. Municipalities
it's already in provincial.
Right, but I'm saying that the parameters around that, I don't know what they are. I can't believe that it would necessarily cover everything.
So from my understanding, you can implement the AMP as long as you're trying to change behavior. And if the township can prove that you're trying to change some sort of behavior, then they can implement it. Now, I think you can implement it consecutively on different topics. Yeah. I don't think you can have a blanket AMP that says all the bylaws are. But you could, if like, let's just say you were having an issue with fence heights, you could say, okay, anybody with a fence height that's over 6 feet tall, 6 feet in the backyard, is automatically fined, and you're fined. But they can do this. You're fined $100 a day until that's done.
So that, again, we haven't implemented it yet. That's still coming back. I haven't seen all the details. I would never want a system like that. That's ridiculous.
Do you think you will implement it?
It depends what it looks like at the end of the day. If there's a scenario where people don't have an opportunity to have, like, if the guy we just walk up and arbitrarily say your fence is 2 inches high, here's your ticket, that doesn't work for me at all. If it's a scenario where we've told you 15 times your fence is breaching the bylaw and then we ticket you, well, I can live with that. There is a cutoff. You do have to enforce the bylaws at some point, but some of it's discretionary. And as I said at the beginning of this, we're complaints driven. We want to be relatively, let's say, fair. We're not a scenario where we want to run around ticketing everybody for every loose eaves trough, right? But by the same token, there are other residents who expect their neighborhoods to be kept tidy. They expect things to be managed. And if the one system never gets us there and we're years in court and there's a way to get around that, we're going to do that. But I've already mentioned, for example, the parking. We're not going to take that OPP piece.
Yeah, and I think, and once again, I think for me too, because the ticket system, like through that, like you can have, they can implement tickets up to about $100,000. So it's like if you do that to someone, you're like, okay, we're going to charge you $1,000 a month until it's done. You know, all of a sudden at the end of the year, it's $12,000. If you want to collect that, you add it on taxes.
Yeah, now we're getting, this is getting way beyond anything that I would. This is a small town. We're not looking at, unless, look, if you've got an absolute safety issue, let's go back, say someone's got, I'll use it. So you've got rodents everywhere that are infecting all your neighbors.
Yeah.
Seniors have things and there's rats running around.
So you could put it just on safety issues.
Well, I'm not sure. So what I'm telling is staff have brought that to us. They said, are you interested in this? These other townships are doing it.
Yeah. And
I'm saying, well, what's the point? And the argument was that we can get some stuff solved quicker because the court case isn't resolving literally this thing. And I think it went on for 4 years.
Yeah.
And
I'm familiar,
And now that it's been resolved and that he's been charged, he still doesn't move. So now we have to make a decision who's going to. We're trying to avoid that end of it.
But if you can go through the process, right? Everybody's got their day in court, and then you can charge them. You should be able to go back to them for damages, right? Like,
but it takes years and years.
Yeah.
And so the neighbors are sitting there looking at this stuff.
But just like anybody, like if somebody were to sue me personally, right? They could sue me, they could get a judgment. But if I don't have the money, it might take them years and years to get that. But that's just the reality of our judicial system.
And that's not where I ever want us to be. To me, suing your own residents is a horrible thing to be doing.
Yeah.
It's a horrible but there are people who do not cooperate with basic civil and bylaws that other residents expect us to enforce. If your dog is off leash and is doing things, we're going to have to enforce those rules, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to find a system that's effective. It's not punitive. We're not, but you're trying to make it work, right? So we'll take a look at the AMPs that comes through. If it's as black and white as the minute they see a violation, they fine you $1,000 a day and there's no I can't support that. Yeah. But if it's a system that says after these multiple steps where you've had an opportunity to deal with the situation, then we may implement this.
And I can understand that too. And I guess it depends on how levied those fines are.
Well, that's part of it. And I don't know what those numbers are because they haven't been presented at all.
Yeah.
And again, we're not out here to bankrupt our residents. We're out here to just keep civility and make sure that the neighborhoods are relatively clean and people are getting on.
Yeah.
Right?
And the only reason why I'm even on it, because we had a guy on here about that. But even in like Waynfleet, they have these bylaws for a short-term rental, and I mean they're like one fine is $20,000, and then it's kind of like there's no way to really fight it because it's been voted in. It's an AMP system, and the only really way to fight it is to go to the township where they have a clerk that hears the case, but it doesn't really make a difference. So that's all.
I absolutely hear you.
As opposed to jumping in too far.
So the principle is to try to keep civility.
Yeah.
But that can't be at the expense of having a fair hearing.
Yeah.
Right? At least a fair hearing. But it also can't leave you with a system that's never enforceable because it doesn't come back.
Of course.
So there's a saw off there. But the intention isn't to, again, raise money or sue our own residents. We're trying to make sure that legitimate complaints are dealt with effectively and as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And so it's not easy. It's
no, and we're kind of getting off topic, but let's go back. So we've got I just want to kind of touch on one thing here too. Planning, is a provincial thing, correct?
Yes, most planning. So let me just
planning.
So there's a couple things. Planning. There's a planning act.
Yeah.
Passes at the provincial level. It's an umbrella. It covers all of the planning stuff. Stuff comes in, goes out. I just got a letter from the minister today. We've changed this rule on setbacks.
Yeah.
They're going to give right now. If you've got a setback, if you want a minor variance, you go to the committee of adjustment. They're going to make as a right a 10% setback without having to go to the committee.
Nice.
Right, but those are things that that comes in. We got to change the rules.
Yeah.
We update our bylaw. You see a bylaw change. It's driven by that kind of thing.
Because if you go on the site, you do see bylaw amendment,
That's
bylaw amendment.
Pushing us. So sometimes we will try to clean some stuff up, get rid of some nonsense bylaws that have been around forever, streamline the process. I mean, the principle here, Let me just back up. I recognize how hard it is to do business in Ontario. It is tough, right? Having been in business myself, just opened my daughter's dance studio, and frankly, I don't know how some people do it.
No.
When you add all the layers of government on it and all the
it's ridiculous
nonsense that we throw at you and the forms to fill it, and there's always something else.
Yeah.
Well, what about this and what about that study? And you got to do so. It's virtually it's really. And so the guy, well, I'm going to Michigan then. I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? I get that. We know that. So we're trying to streamline. If we can remove any little step from the process, we will do that. So you might see a bylaw amendment where we'll pull out. So, you used to see a site plan 3 times. Well, you only need to see it twice. So we'll pull that out. So you'll see adjustments like that to streamline it. We are very, Steve, we're a very pro-business council, but we are hamstrung by the rules that come down from the province. But internally, if there's stuff we can eliminate, we'll do that. And I've said before, fully cognizant of who pays the bills here. Residents pay, pretty high taxes to live in their residence. The businesses pay 1.4 on top of that, right? They get the benefit of running the business, absolutely, but they also keep they pay for the services, provide the jobs, and keep our communities running along with the residential tax. Those are the last people you want to harm. You want them to succeed. So the Planning Act becomes very difficult.
Planning Act is provincial.
It's provincial. So you get the Planning Act that comes down, and then what happens is the county...
You guys input based on that.
Right. We have to... So the county will pass, and we're going to do very high level stuff. So there's a Planning Act.
Yeah.
The county is responsible for what they call the official plan.
Okay.
So it's a plan right across the county, the whole county, all 7 townships.
Regardless of the town that it's in, the county
That's a county responsibility.
Okay. Yeah.
They're responsible
Zoning,
for that.
everything.
No. This piece of it is land use. So when you look at the county as a whole...
zoning, no?
Zoning is us. I'll get to that in
Okay.
a sec. So land use is, this is a farm.
Yeah.
This is industrial. This is residential. That's the use.
Okay.
Okay. So if I designate you a farm and that's your land use, that's in the official plan.
Okay.
Okay. So if I come along and I say, I want to turn this into a car plant.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to get it rezoned, which is
like a truck zone.
Could be. So the first level is you'd have to change the official plan to allow industrial use. So that's one step. That you put businesses through, right?
Okay.
And some of that makes total sense because you don't want asphalt plants beside schools, land use, right?
Yeah.
You want to put it where it belongs. You don't want farms being overrun by right? So you're protecting farmland. So land use protects the use of the land itself.
Okay.
But when you get down to, then let's say this is industrial, okay? That's where you get into the zoning. And zoning are the townships. And that's basically what you can do on the property. So if you've zoned me for an industrial piece of property in the if you've put me in the OP as industrial, well, now I can come up and say I want to open up a fuel plant.
Sure.
And we can say we're not going to zone you for that. That's not allowed in our zoning bylaw, and try to prevent that. Now, anybody...
But the zoning bylaws are different. So if I have an agricultural piece of property, the county has determined that it's an agricultural piece of property, right? And then each township, so whether I'm in Erin or Guelph, Eramosa, what I can do on that property could vary based on the township?
Depending on what your zoning bylaw says, yes. They're usually pretty similar. Yeah. Right? They're not. There's no big, massive divergence
because the
here.
zoning bylaws do come from the province, right?
No. Well, look, zoning bylaws are enforced and passed by municipalities, but we can only do things in the zoning that the province will allow.
Based on, yes. I guess that you're right. The zoning bylaw is based on the provincial guidelines,
right?
But then they are municipal, so they are like Guelph Eramosa bylaws.
Let me give you an example. So for years in downtown Rockwood, you had car lots, up and down the main street. Yeah. So we decided a decade ago, because we're trying to help the downtown, that we didn't want the whole downtown being car lots. Mm-hmm. So in the official plan, it's commercial. It's allowed. In the zoning bylaw we had at the time, it was allowed. So we changed the zoning bylaw, amended it to say no more car lots going forward. Now, the ones that are there are grandfathered in. It's called legal non-conforming. Of course, they don't conform to today's laws, but they're legal. Yeah. So you don't bring any more in. But through zoning, we've restricted that. So that's what zoning can do.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense.
So that's actual use. But the fact that it's designated as a commercial area is land use from the county.
I don't ever remember many car lots, though.
Well, there's a couple left. There was one right across There was one from the hair just across the street from me that's now just a paved lot off Guelph Street, the trail that used to go up.
Yeah.
There's Mead's property lot is there, the village car lot is there.
Okay.
And we just didn't want, because if you're in Guelph and you can't do that, they're going to roll out here and fill the downtown with car lots.
Yeah.
Right? So it was a decision made that we want to try to, as much as possible, try to make it a little more walkable. So that's a zoning change.
That makes sense.
So when you've got, zoning, each municipality can have those little subtle changes to the zoning bylaw within provincial guidelines.
Yes.
And I'll reiterate it again. Everything municipalities do comes from the province.
Yes.
We are creatures of the province. We cannot, out of ether, create our own rules.
So if there's something that I criticize Chris White on doing or not doing, you like realistically, it could be because the regulations that are at the provincial level. Like I can't do this because, that states we're not allowed to input that or something like that.
So then that becomes part of when we talked earlier about when I talked about doing this job.
Yeah.
So joining AMO and Roma, part of the rationale in getting on those boards is that when you're facing ministers and they're passing legislation, when we have a conference, for example, you can book a delegation with the minister.
Yeah.
I want the Minister of Education because I want a school.
Yeah.
So I get that minister right in front of me, and my job is to convince them to give me a school.
Yeah, not like minister, not minister.
No,
Okay.
a provincial minister in the cabinet.
Yeah.
So if they're passing legislation which is silly or going to impact, and you hear about it and they're doing consultation, part of my job as a mayor may be to lobby.
Yeah.
Don't do this because A, B, C, D, and E. And sometimes you can change the legislation and get them to shift gears, right? So again, you could be a small town mayor and sit in the office and do your little thing, or you can go out and actually try to influence other agencies and other levels of government. I've spent many times in front of ministers on things. Now, they don't always listen.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll just do stuff, and you were just stuck with it. And
I think a lot that's important for a lot of people to realize too, is like sometimes it is what it is, right? Like something's voted on and it passes, and you might not like it, but it's been gone through the process, and there you go.
And we can do what we try to do to change things. And again, we lobby around those issues. So getting back to planning, so you've got an official plan, which is the whole county, what the land is used for. Mm-hmm. Zoning is what you can actually do within that use. And so, and there may be zones, right? You're beside wetlands and conservation zones. Well, we don't want to zone an asphalt plant there, right? So you may have a property here where you could have a low-use office building, but not an asphalt plant. So your zoning bylaw is going to say, in this zone, you can do A, B, C, D, 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 D. Yeah. Now, the difficulty is you can't capture everything. The problem with anything, including bylaws, is they're a product of the time when they're created, reacting or responding to things or trying to get ahead of something.
Yes.
And then you get a bylaw. I can't tell you how many times I've gone, who passed that?
Yeah.
What is the point of that? Well, 24 years ago, Bob did this, and so we thought we needed a rule, and we did this. And you're like, well, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like having like a place to hang your horses in front of a commercial space, right? It used to be, you'd have some of those bylaws in downtown Guelph.
They're still legal in Rockwood, by the way.
Well, there you go.
Downtown.
So then, okay. So, you.
But I was going to ask. So I was going to. So. It's not perfect, and I tell businesses, and I'm not trying to be funny, planning is not our friend.
Yeah.
It gets in the way for reasons that make sense, protecting farmland and the rest of it, but the minutia becomes impossible. And if I have to lay out capital to start a new business or build a building, and I'm hammering you to death with fees, and it becomes, you pick other jurisdictions. So we're very cognizant of that.
And on that too, it's important for everybody else out there to know you have other bodies that may have control within those zones, right? So you might have a residential house that's in the floodplain, okay, and all of a sudden there's conservation.
That's right.
Or you might be in the escarpment, and or the greenbelt, or whatever it is too. So even though you have certain uses, there might be a controlling body over top of that says, no, we don't allow that, or yes, we will.
If you ever see the maps that someone pulls all the layers over on property that might be in a hazard zone or a wetland, here's the municipal thing, here's the GRC map, here's the this map, here's the that map. And this is why we tell people when they're doing anything even remotely complicated, you need a planner, or you need somebody who's going to go up to the township and say, what can I do here?
Well, even the hazard, like we look at zoning maps all the time, and the use, right? It might be hazard, but then it's an agricultural zone, right? So then, but I have agents call me all the time, and they're like, Well, hazard, what does that mean? Like, it sounds so
It's a
bad.
stupid name.
Yes.
It should be conservation
It's
land.
conservation.
It's a silly
Instead
land.
of saying that, they say hazard. So they just, and then they say, well, no, we can't. So some deals we actually lose because a lot of people don't really understand the land use versus what the zone will entail or allow.
Exactly right. And that's why I say it's difficult. Planning is difficult for business.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need expertise. One of the things we try to do to make sure, if you want to do something and before you spend money, I say to everybody, come up and we'll have a pre-consult chat at the office. So you come to me and say, I want to build a rocket plant beside Rockwood Centennial. Okay, so you come up and we'll have that and we'll say, you can't do that for these reasons, just out of the gate. So don't waste any money on it. Or you can.
Yeah.
And here's a path that you might want to take.
So that's important too. So for anybody out there, let's say I want to build a house. Okay, I have a lot. I want to build a house. I can go to you. I can pay a fee and have a consultation with the township in different departments.
Well,
right?
let's just. In some cases, you don't. What I like to do possibly is not have a fee at the just an initial. If you've got a lot of record with a house, you probably don't need us. But let's say you've got a lot and you want to open a
brothel.
You want to build something. Let's go with the car lot. And you come up to the township, and the guy says, "Can I see the maps? What's around me? What's the hazard? What's the thing?"
Yeah.
We can tell them right at the gate. You can't. Don't hire don't do anything.
So they don't even need to pay the money.
Well, but I'm not talking about a 3-hour deep analysis. I can tell you out of the gate, you can't build a house in the middle of a floodplain.
Yes.
Come and ask.
But you do have that though, right? Like,
but so the next step is, let's say we say, you could probably put a car lot there. Now you need to come in and do a pre-cons, and then there's a fee.
And the pre-cons has a fee, but then you get the different bodies.
Information.
There's a big benefit to that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
See, I like that. And I didn't know that for a long time, and I always find that something like that's very beneficial.
Because the last thing.
What's it called?
It's just a pre-consult, depending on what you're doing. The last thing I want to see is some entrepreneur or somebody spending their hard-earned money wanting to do something business-like or good or create something in the community to waste $10,000 talking about something and doing maps up and stuff, and they haven't even looked at us, and we say, you can't.
Yeah.
You're in a floodplain. Not because we're being mean to you. You can't do that in a floodplain. You need to ask.
What's the pre-consult cost?
It depends on how. I think it might be an hourly rate. It depends on the complexity of what you're doing.
But you could get GRCA, MTO, the county, and the township all together in one room.
Well, or we can get that information. It depends. Again, if you're doing something small, if we're talking about a house, it's probably just going to be the local guys. If you're talking about building an auto plant, then you're going to get everybody. I'll get everybody's brother, including the local members of parliament. I mean, something like that big. Depending on the scale, you scale up to the need.
Okay, so just out of clarity, accessory dwelling units, you can have them in Rockwood.
You're allowed. No? That's right. Yes, you can.
Separate dwelling.
Yes. Yeah. So you're allowed 3 units on a property now. Okay. So you're allowed the main home.
Yeah.
Right. The bigger house, an apartment in that home. Mm-hmm. That's your second, and then you're allowed a building on your property. That's the 3rd unit, right? That building has to be smaller than the primary home. There's setback. There's rules. So you'd have to come and ask us what those parameters are. But you're allowed to have 3 different living units on a lot.
And that's been changed recently.
That was changed within the past couple of years. That came out of provincial legislation.
Okay. So that's one of those examples that filter down.
That's an example of them pushing through. But provincial legislation.
Do you have to adopt the provincial legislation?
Yes.
Like, do you have a choice?
No. It's law. If it's no, hold it. Again, you can't blanket this stuff. So there's some laws that are you shall.
Yes.
Okay. There's some laws that say you may. So there are things that we don't have.
So like the AMP, you don't need to.
Let me give you an example.
But then the dwellings you do.
Cannabis stores.
Yeah.
When they first came out, they went to municipalities and they said, it's provincial legislation. You can have them, but now we can decide.
Yeah.
So municipalities opted in or opted out. I think probably most people are in now. But that's an example of where it's not you have to do this. You can do this.
Okay.
But most of the time, it's you will do this. It's law.
Okay. So then, chickens. Mm-hmm. All right. People are conflicted with this. Can you have chickens in Rockwood?
No.
Okay.
So we've looked at this several times. We're in an agricultural zone.
Yeah.
Right? Now I hear people say, well, they've got them in...
This is an agricultural community.
That's right.
Right.
So you hear people talk about, well, Guelph has them. Yeah. Or New York, other large urban centers might have them. But it's a little different here on a number of levels. Number one, having chickens can be, the chickens themselves can be noisy, smelly, They're live animals. They absolutely need to be taken care of. Sometimes I think people get them, they're well intended.
That's right.
But the amount of work involved, which means we have to then hire more bylaw to check the chicken coops and do all of that. So from an administrative municipal side, it's difficult, but you know, you might feed it in if that's what everybody wanted.
Yeah.
But the bigger issue for us was, and we were contacted by the agricultural community, because we abut the agricultural community, the spread of bird disease can get into those poultry operations and wipe out their birds. One of the things recently in the States, there was a big battle about the price of eggs, right? And that didn't come out of the blue. There was a bunch of bird flu that went through a whole bunch of different states where they had to cull the birds. So there's less birds, less eggs, price goes up.
Yeah.
So the fear in the agriculture community around that is real. And we've had some stuff in the county, right? And there has been a transmission on the Board of Health that I'm on. There was a transmission to a human in BC. So now it's a real issue. We have, but again,
one case doesn't really, it's not like an epidemic.
Unless that's you.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're not gonna, right?
Did they die?
I don't know.
Okay.
That was one of the things that came back to the Board of Health. I haven't followed that through. The fact that it's just an indication that some of this stuff can be transferable from birds to human. Very rare.
I've heard farmers talk about that too. I've heard farmers talk about people in towns having birds, but not being able to care for them or not knowing specific things. I can see a whole bunch of stuff with that, and I know in Guelph they have a bylaw. We had chickens when we were in Guelph, and it was like, 100 had to be 100 feet from any residence. So the larger lots at the back corner, you could have them there.
Yeah. So we've tried. Okay. We've actually, just so you know, we've recently updated it to include residential areas and agricultural to have chickens. We're not anti-chicken. We're just, there's a lot of difficulties with it. And when our agricultural
community,
you're
anti-chicken, all right.
Oh yeah. When our agricultural community asks us, we have a duty to try to protect that. So.
Okay.
And this is one of those issues, it's 50-50, like you can't.
Okay, right? So what about home occupation? Has there been anything come up for home occupations?
So you can have occupations in your home today. Okay. There's some basic things around those that you can't be disruptive to the neighborhood. Like you can't run kind of a retail outlet off your front porch.
No.
You can't do something where there's 15 cars coming in. If you're doing bookkeeping or different things, you'd have to check with the township. There's a lot of people who do that, right? And we don't want to discourage that. But where a line gets drawn is if someone, so you've got a business, let's say someone was selling videos downtown.
Yeah.
They're paying commercial tax, right? So they're paying a lot of money that pays for the roads, the bridges, the fire department. And as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about how the property tax is broken down, but they're paying for the services that they're getting.
Sure.
Someone operating in their home does not. They're in a residence. Their tax structure doesn't change. So they're indirectly, if they're selling videos off their front porch, getting all the services so you're competing against your own businesses in something that can't come off your front porch.
How many businesses here in Rockwood are we really competing against when we're talking
No. I'm giving you the blatant example of where you're going to draw a line. If a guy opens up a convenience store on his front porch,
fair enough.
We're not going to do that because the convenience store down the way is
which again comes to discretion, right?
There's a lot of businesses going on inside the homes, and we like that because those can be incubators for things that eventually get big enough in the home, they move onto the main street.
So give us an example of a business that is a nuisance in a home that you've run into.
Guy does a car repair in his backyard.
Okay.
Right. He's got a garage. He's banging all the night and day. Complaints come in, and I'll go back to let's just
see that's an easy one to me though, right?
Because but I'm giving you that. But that's an example. So we're not. I don't. Give me an example of the last time we've chased somebody out of their house.
What about like, and I don't know this at all, but I've heard reports of people doing home-based baking in their house, and then all of a sudden the bylaw officer comes to their door and says, we don't like this.
No, it's not bylaw doesn't like it. That's Board of Health.
Okay.
Because what happens then is if you have a commercial, look.
But Board of Health is not.
Board of Health has authority to dictate.
But they're not municipal, right?
They're funded by municipalities in the province.
But the bylaw officer would go to the door and do that?
They have their own, no.
The Board of Health.
Board of Health inspector would show up.
Board of Health is provincial.
That's right. But the Board of Health is made up of provincial and municipal representatives.
Yes.
Sits in Guelph. But they have authority and legislation around food and water that it's not municipal. They can come into a restaurant, you know this. They come into a restaurant and say, you've got rodents in the back, we're shutting you down. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So they keep food safe. So one of the things, let me just step back a minute. Everybody remembers Walkerton.
Yeah.
Right? Walkerton changed all the rules around a lot of things, including water and safety issues, right? So from then, you ended up with, in some cases, extreme rules, right? You have to have, I'll give you an example. When I was on Roma, people would have a church dinner, and the way it would work, if it was the locals, they could have the church dinner that night. But if it was, you brought people from the town next door, you had to have 3 sinks to wash the potatoes. You had to have a freezer here. You had to do this. So people being what they are, they'd add a 25-cent fee to the guy's ticket to make them a local member for the night. I mean, people work around it. I'm only saying,
which to me is important, because I do find, like, I think you said it before, discretion.
Yeah.
And I think, like, you know, when you get into this and you, like, somebody can't cook, like, bake cookies, sell, like, you know, like Oscar the Grouch cookies and sell them, because we've done it ourselves, like with you know, like we have a friend of ours that does cakes, okay? Yeah. And she does phenomenal cakes. So we would get a cake for our kid's birthday party, local, because we think, you know what, we're not going to Dairy Queen, we go get somebody local. And then all of a sudden, you know, now you can't do it. You can't even bake a cake for your friends.
So let me follow that. So I'm not arguing any of that. I mean, that's small town stuff. But when you've got a new environment based on things like Walkerton and safety and health and things around food, you get listeria. Remember that outbreak?
Yeah.
Killed a bunch of people. So there's a big concern. Every time the Lions show up with their truck, the Board of Health shows up, does an inspection to make sure that stuff is safe. So in-home baking, because we had that, we thought, great, let's encourage some, that could eventually lead to a new bakery downtown, of course.
Yeah.
But the way they've got it set up is you cannot cook your commercial foods, say your baked muffins, with your home kitchen. It has to be a separate. And I didn't make the rules. I'm just telling you.
Look, it's so short-sighted, because you can't even have a bake sale.
Well, that's not the issue. The issue is, what are the provincial legislations around health, around food? And I'm not saying. I mean, some of these rules might be extreme.
It's not your.
But I'm trying to tell you what.
Anyways,
but let me just follow through. So the rationale behind that is to keep the food safe. So those two have to be separated, so there's no cross contamination.
Sure.
Some kid goes into the kitchen and opens some raw chicken, right? Yeah. And you don't know about it, right? And it's not separate from this isolated commercial cooking.
Yeah.
And you cook some muffins and you kill a bunch of people. Well, who's responsible for that? That's the extreme way of looking at it, but that's the way they make some of the. However,
but I think
if
the
in your
businesses
home,
have to be responsible. Like if you have a home-based business, it's still a business. You have to be insured. We're insured, right? And any business usually has to be insured. So I think it's to some degree, it's kind of like, you know, Walkerton. We always talk about Walkerton, right? Mm-hmm. I've got clients of mine that had farms out there during that time, and you know, like we knew they figured out what the case was, and now it's like one thing that's happened. I don't know, like when was Walkerton?
20 years ago.
20 more,
yeah,
right?
No,
and now we use that thing to kind of scare everybody else.
But let's back up. What you asked for was, why can't people just bake stuff in their home? And I'm explaining to you that the environment at the provincial level and across the board, after things like Walkerton and the listeria thing that went through, every time something like that occurs, the rules tighten right up. And so the experts, professionals, have decided to make sure that there's no safety issues with the cross-contamination from a home kitchen. Yeah. If you're going to bake muffins, you can do that, but you might have to set up a commercial kitchen in your backyard. It's not excluded. You just have to make sure that you can prepare the food up to the Board of Health requirements. So there's no.
But the bottom line is, if a local parish here, a church wants to have a bake sale, okay, the township's not going to, or the bylaw officer for the town is not going to come in and say, hey, were those cooked in a commercial kitchen?
Bylaw officer's not Board of Health.
Okay, so then the Board of Health would have to come. And close that down.
There's going to be and I'm not an expert on this either. Somebody would have to contact the board, but there's levels, different things you can do, right?
Yeah.
And some of it's inspectors. It's discretion. Some can be really you can't do anything, and others just say take that away and come back with, right? Yeah. But the initial intent of the rules, and again, I'll go back to my point about trying to do business in the province. Sure. We're heavy-handed. There's mega regulations. There's a reason for some of them. Some of them are extreme. Yeah. So in-home baking, the minute, and see, people can be concerned about some of these rules until somebody gets sick or die, and they say, well, why did you let them, right? Why are you allowing? So it's heavy-handed. Having bakery in your home. When we had one of these come through, and I was talking to the township, and we said, we don't have it. It's a Board of Health. And I talked to the Board of Health, and I said, what? Come on. And they said, nope, here's the rationale, here's the rules. Came out of the chief medical officers of health in Toronto or province or wherever they put these things together, and they've determined that commercial kitchens or commercial food has to have X number of saying you can't leave your frozen, you can't have the meat beside the this, and you can't. We had one of the markets, one of our local markets out in the rural, had to re-rig all of their fridges and stuff and add stuff so that the meat flow went a certain way to make sure that there's no contamination. So it seems a little heavy-handed, but that's what it is. So
well, and I mean, I guess too, like, and just kind of jumping, like you know, I remember there was the church up here on Speedside, and they're doing a camp for the kids, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like $75 per family, so there's no money being made. Most of the money is donated, so people can go to camp at $75 per week per family. And then the township went to them and said, no, you guys have to put up a tent. If you're going to put up a tent, you need a permit to put up a tent.
Okay, so so this is safety stuff, and this is where this all comes back. Whether you agree or disagree, this again are rules. So if you're putting up a little tent, I don't think we show up. Tents of certain sizes, because what will happen is if you put that tent up, okay, and let's say you don't put it up correctly. Have you seen those scenarios where they have a concert and the stands fall on the people?
Sure.
It's an extreme way of looking at it.
Yeah.
If the municipality turns a blind eye to an event, let me just back. There's a bit of a hard rule. The minute the public are invited into something, the rules change dramatically. Safety rises to the top. Yeah. Example, remember Peter Appleyard used to play here in town? They had an event for him just across the municipal border here in a barn. So people think, I'm going to have a little bit of jazz in my barn. Who cares? Show up. We'll post some chairs out. Full-fledged, here's your exit, here's the exit signs, here's how you escape, here's the safety. Because once people are on board, if there's a fire or a structural fault or any of those things, you have to make sure that it's safe. That's an obligation of the municipality. So if you're inviting 50 people onto an event that are going to be in a tent, you have to make sure that tent is properly put up.
At what point is it the responsibility of that organization or that person to take responsibility? Like, they've got their own insurance. Like, I'm going to have a pool party and somebody drowns in the pool. You know, if we're at fault, we're liable. But that doesn't mean just because one person drowns, we don't have a pool party.
That's not how the system works, though. And at the end of the day, the province puts burdens on the municipalities to enforce that. Have you heard of joint and several liability insurance?
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. So municipalities get hit with that all the time. And I'm going to, this is a story I've been telling for a few years. So two kids are chasing each other down the street. This happened, but I may have some of the parameters off. Two 6-year-olds chasing each other down the street. One of them runs out into the street. A drunk driver, no insurance, no license. Bam. Bang. Kids in a wheelchair. It's a $12 million catastrophic long-term thing.
Yeah.
The stop sign had been stolen the night before.
Yeah.
Okay. So the judge looks at that and says the municipality is 2% responsible for the act because the stop sign is like a 6-year-old is going to look at a stop sign, right? But you're 2% responsible. The guy who hit them has zero money. Municipality pays 100%, right? The first thing that lawyers do is go after municipalities because they're considered to have deep pockets because they have access to taxpayers.
Yeah.
In a different world, you might say catastrophic accidents like that should be taken on by the province. Right? Why isn't? Because they won't change the joint and several liability. We tried to get it moved to at least 30%. That's why you see toboggan hills close. That's why you see play sets disappear from things. That's why you see municipalities being paralyzed because if anybody can say, you know, the lighting on that street light was a little bit off, you're 1% responsible. And if the rest of the parties have no money, we eat that.
Well, and I think once again the discretion, but you know they're like you can't go anywhere without being on a public road.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that people need to take responsibility for themselves. So even if they can sue you, maybe the federal government can say, okay, well, if the township here, that maybe something can come down from the province where if there is no responsibility of the township, right? Then they weren't at fault, then there's no way there's a case.
I would be with you 100%.
Right.
If you told me that people had responsibility for their actions and were liable for the things that they did, I'd be with you 100%, but that's not the world we live in. The world we live in is lawyers and liability and insurance companies and the rest of it. And if someone runs out on the street in front of a bus and gets hit, they may say your sidewalk was a little crooked. Like, they come after us. It's how it works. So if we don't try to protect, and ultimately, by the way, understand another thing. I recognize council, we're just here managing the assets of the township, right?
Yeah.
We don't own them. They're not mine. They're all of ours. They're
But you
yours.
guys are
They're mine.
still liable.
No. We're all liable.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you're a property taxpayer. If we get enough lawsuits against the township around, for the wrong word, let's say negligence, that they can build to the court case, your taxes are going to go up because we have to pay those insurance premiums.
But aren't the townships, aren't they, they're a corporation, right? So you have a corporation of the township of Guelph, Eramosa, right?
Which is owned by the citizens, basically, right? At the end of the day, the township is made up of the residents.
I thought that's why they went to corporations in the.
What does that protect you from?
Well, because I have a corporation for our company, right? Yeah. So that protects me and my personal liability. Right, so you if the corporation puts something on, and it's not the individual taxpayer, you can't go after everybody that owns the corporation.
No.
The corporation's an entity in itself.
So there may be different iterations inside the Corporations Act for a municipality, and again, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
So maybe an individual with a business has these parameters. Municipalities are a different creature, right? Yeah. They're not individuals; they are municipalities, and they can raise taxes. So at the end of the day, they put many things on us through legislation that we're responsible for. So road safety, for example. Yeah. Now, we get sued all the time on every accident that occurs. Now, in some cases, it may be that a stop sign disappeared.
Yeah.
And
if a stop sign disappears, I can understand that.
No, but what I'm saying is that lawyers and everybody will come after us, and we still have to fight it in court. There's expenses like that. There's all of those things that occur. So if at the end of the day, a municipality is not protecting itself from lawsuits by doing and enforcing the rules that exist, and we constantly get sued and lose, our insurance goes through the roof, not to mention we have to pay those settlements out of the corporation's money, and the corporation's money is the taxpayers' money.
But there's got to be some sort of limited liability there where, you can only, just like a regular homeowner. If I have no money and you're going to sue me, go ahead. If a township has no money, then...
But that's not the assumption. The township has access to taxpayers.
But there's got to be
there might be, and I'm not a lawyer.
Be a blanket.
Why does there got to be?
Because you can't have an accident. All three drivers sue the township, and then all three get $25 million.
No, I mean in that specific case.
Right,
but
declare your bankruptcy in the corporation and start another one.
So we had one before I was on council. They had regraded a road, put new gravel on a road. Okay. Young couple gets on that road, drives off. Bam. Yeah. It's a $10 million suit. Yeah. Because the road had been graded. Yeah. We lost. Yeah. Right. And the township had to pay that $10 million settlement. Insurance rates went up for a while. Yeah. Right. So maybe the signage was not correct saying new gravel. I don't know the full details of that, but I'm just trying to point out that we get sued all the time because the assumption is it's unlimited money because you can access taxpayers. Now, are there caps? Maybe. Yeah. I'm not a lawyer, but we're certainly the first place they go to. So back to the point of the tent. Well, if we don't make sure that tent is safe.
Okay, but I guess the least they can, and I think this happened with the tent, that if it's a charity event where nobody's making money, that
not making money is not the relevance. The fact that the public is on site.
Not that you need the approval, but maybe the $500 fee goes out the window because it's a charity.
That's a different conversation. If we're required by provincial legislation or laws to make sure that there's a permit for that tent, people can apply. We've got a whole list of charitable stuff. Okay. We just put another $5,000 into the East Wellington Community Health Services, which does such a fantastic job in our community, taking them to $25,000. And the hall here gets rented. I remember Doris Enns used to run for cancer things. We give them the hall for free. The point I made earlier that we're managing the assets. These are yours. These are yours and mine. We own these. That's your hall. So if a charity came to us and said certain things, we might look at that, but we can't do it on their property.
So at what point, right, and this is, just what's going on in my head, at what point do we, are we so chicken shit to do anything, like toboggan, like we take away tobogganing hills?
So think about that.
At what point can we, take responsibility for ourselves, enjoy life where the kids can actually go and toboggan?
I agree with that 100%, and we did just that. So they came to us. They were going through how you had to have this 6 inches of stuff to monkey bars and all of these variants, and that's inspected once or twice a year by law, right? Kid falls off the monkey bars, and you don't have proper surface, and they break their arm.
Got your water there too.
Yeah, we're liable. Yeah. Right? That's just the system. Like it or not, it's how it works.
Fair enough. So, okay.
Wait a minute, though. So those guys show up when I say, I want a toboggan hill in town. And this was a wrestle. And you know what? When I'm finished doing this job,
Yeah.
you can move a lot of paper. You can do a lot of stuff. But I'm a real believer in being able to point to tactile things you can say. I was instrumental in getting the medical center. You know, I made sure that crosswalk went in. I fought for that traffic light. I built this thing. I added pickleball courts.
Yeah.
But that's always a partnership, and the community comes in and they that toboggan hill. I thought, I'm having one, no matter. And they kept pulling it off the site plan and pulling off the site plan. And the argument was the insurance guys were afraid, right?
Yeah.
They were saying, don't do that. And I said, to your point, I said, are we going to paralyze ourselves as a society?
Yes.
Are we going to be afraid to go at our front door? There has to be a line somewhere with some reasonableness to it. So Hamilton banned all toboggan hills for a while. Now, if you've got a toboggan hill that's entering onto a busy highway, it's going through trees. It's going into poles.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you maybe make an argument, right?
Sure.
And they do. They hit the thing and they sue us.
Yeah.
That hill in Rockwood, there's none of it.
Yeah.
Right? You can bump into each other.
Yeah.
So we made a decision, okay, we're going to buck the trend. We're going to put that hill in. Children need a place to go in the winter. It's a fantastic thing. So I'm as frustrated as you are with
Right.
being paralyzed and
Yes.
not being able to live life, especially in a more rural environment. So I say,
Right.
live and let live. Let people live their lives. Don't overrule them. Don't overregulate them.
Yeah.
And take a risk and take responsibility. Absolutely.
And I would too. And I think that we should look at, personal liability versus, township liability with certain incidences, because I totally understand if someone's negligent and the road is bad, then fine. But I do find like everybody's looking to blame somebody else right now.
So the other side of that equation is that's my personal feelings on these things.
Yeah.
By the same token, I wear the hat as the director of the corporation, the municipality of Guelph, Eramosa. Yeah. I have a duty to watch its fiscal situation. I have a duty to watch its lawsuits. I have a duty to protect the corporation.
Yeah.
So I can't do something that's going to put us at risk, right? I can't ignore the permit law for tents. It's just the law because that's a law. We don't do it. It falls on Mrs. Smith, and she's killed. They sue us. Yeah. We had an incident where somebody bumped into somebody. Somebody's walking backwards on our track in one of our facilities, bumps into an elderly person, right? It knocks them down, and so there's some injury. We were sued for that. That's our fault that guy's walking backwards.
Yeah, right.
But that's the rules, and we can't. So now we have to say no walking backwards.
Yeah.
And then you come to me and say, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And I say, "I'm with you. It's insane."
Yes.
But by the same token, I can't have a senior on fixed income paying taxes and having those taxes go through the roof because they've got a bunch of lawsuits we're paying because we're not enforcing the rules. It's a balance. You have to, if you decide to do this job, right, you are no longer you anymore. You're now an elected official.
Yeah.
Your personal opinions and stuff
So
are part of the
regardless
equation.
of what you think, you still have to go through.
There's
the
rules.
same
Now I can try to
motions.
influence them. Part of my job is to change them. Part of my job is to influence. Part of my job is to let my opinion known. But if the rule is, you can't cross that road, that's the rule. And I can't, until I change that rule, I'm obliged under an oath. We had one of our ex-mayors went to court. Somebody got a parking ticket down in Eden Mills that they didn't want to pay. He went to court. He said, I'm going to fight that ticket with you. And the judge said, what are you doing here? He says, well, I don't think this guy should have got the ticket. When you come into office, you swear an oath. And the oath, it's a legal oath. And it says, I will abide by and uphold the bylaws of the community. And he said, I'm paraphrasing it, right?
Yeah.
If you open your mouth, you're out of office because you've broken your oath. So if there's a law on the books, we are obliged under legal oath to enforce it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, obviously there's nuance and discretion and things
Yeah.
you're responsible for and not. But if there's a bylaw on the books, we have to, as a council, enforce it. My personal opinion that bylaw is stupid is irrelevant.
Yeah.
As the head of the corporation, I have to fix it. Now, it would also be incumbent upon me to change that bylaw if I can.
Yeah. See, there you go. So you can change the bylaws.
No, not necessarily. Yes and no. Depends what the bylaw is. If it's a provincially mandated, you shall.
All right, let's go. Let's do this. Okay, we've got a few things here. What time are we at?
Hour 37.
Okay, we're going to go for a little bit here, okay? But Chris, a couple other things I want to go through, okay? And I'm going to be quick. It's going to be the grocery store, okay? And I know it's going long, but we can cut these so everybody
So let's
can
talk
benefit.
about the grocery store.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Grocery
okay.
store and then the sewage.
Sewage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So You tell me
What would
about
you
the
like?
grocery
Okay,
store.
so as you
everybody
wa-
wants their Tim Hortons. What's going
Well,
on?
you can see what's going on out the window, do they? Well, I mean, when this was bubbling a few years ago, there were a bit of a difference of opinion.
Yeah, I could
At the
understand.
end of the day, we've got a local resident who lives in Switzerland half the time.
Yeah.
He's quite philanthropic. He actually donated. I'm just giving you some context
Yeah.
of who's doing this, right?
No, and I
so he bought
appreciate
all
it.
these property, put it all together. He bought those homes. He knocked them. We're talking 2017 now. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Lives in Everton, as I say. Spends half his time in Switzerland. A couple of years ago, he donated $50 million
Yeah.
to build a mental health youth hub in Guelph.
Yeah.
Right across from Woodlawn Cemetery. You can see it there. It's a,
Yeah. No.
that's
no,
his.
Yeah.
So he's well heeled, he's well intended, and in fact, just as a sidebar onto the grocery, all those piles of soil that are there came from that building site.
Okay.
They moved them from there.
So they're contaminated.
So over the years, no,
I'm joking.
they're
I'm
actually-
joking.
no,
I'm joking.
And we've got the
I'm
soil
joking.
test if you
I'm
want to say that.
joking.
You can't joke about that. So there's been so it's a private sector project, right? And in private sector projects, there's fits and spurts. Some people are very attentive and pushing ahead, and then not so much, and then back and forth. So there's been a bit of that. And then over the time, it can go on and on. Initial difficulties were in 2018 when we thought we were moving ahead. The MTO wanted curb lanes that ran right up in front of the pumps.
Yeah.
So Mohammed of the day, an existing business, we don't want to damage his business. He's been around. He's loyal.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. So we backed off and slowed down and hesitated to see how we could get those curbs mitigated or whatever. And that we're dealing with MTO, and it takes years. And quite often when you deal with MTO, staff turnover, and they turn over a lot.
Yeah.
Right. When I was working on the traffic light at the south end of Rockwood, which took us about 8 years to get that, I had a person one day on the Friday say,
That's
"I think we're
crazy.
good to go. I'll talk to you on Monday." And I called on Monday; they'd retired.
Yeah.
So anyway, so when it comes in, so we got issues with Mohammed. Initially, some concerns from the GRC at the back, bunch of stuff to work through. There were some neighbor concerns and so forth. So you're working through the process, and the biggest initial stuff was battle on the highway. Do they want a divider down the middle of the highway? Can the trucks turn this way? Can the trucks turn that way? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And this drags on and on and on, and then goes quiet for a while.
Yeah.
Then it comes back, and then I don't know the sequence of events. COVID hit.
Yeah.
You have. After that, then you had the construction index went up 60-70% inflation-wise.
Yeah.
So you're looking at cost of building a building,
Yeah.
which makes you hesitate for a while, right?
Of course.
As you're trying to get that done. All this time, just so we're clear here, this has been, and it's going to sound funny because it hasn't happened, a number one priority for me and the council, because the downtown looks like Flint, Michigan. We know it.
Yeah.
Rockwood's commercial corridor needs some help. One of the difficulties we have is just where we're located.
Yeah.
Because we're so close to Guelph, there's a Costco over there.
Yeah.
There's a mall. You can't sell shoes in downtown Rockwood. It's cheaper to do it here. Aaron gets away with it because they're an hour away.
Yeah.
Or downtown Elora, right? They
Yeah.
can do things because there's distance between the next urban center.
Yeah.
We're in Guelph's back pocket, so it hurts the retail down
Yes,
there.
it does.
And if you've got people taking their grocery dollars into Guelph, then they're going to hit the hardware in there. Then they're going to hit the coffee shop. Then they're going to do everything in there.
Yeah.
And the money's lost. So getting this grocery store is an absolute priority for us. Keep that revenue here. The jobs could be several part-time jobs, tons
Yeah,
of them.
I think it's great.
The service. So for all those reasons, we've been pushing away, and we keep bumping.
Okay.
So in the last, and one of the bigger eyesores has simply been the piles of rocks
The
and
gravel,
weeds and
yeah.
stuff. And people say, well, you know, I can't do that on my property. Why haven't
Yeah.
you cleaned it up? Well, because it's a bit of a construction site, and we're trying to. The objective here is to get this thing built.
Yeah.
That's the number one goal. So I don't want to tinker around the edges if it's going to get in the way of us moving.
Yeah, because you
ahead.
might piss somebody off and then have it stall even more. Right.
So those are things we're looking at. This guy's fantastic, though.
So then, like, do they have any idea on timing?
So let me give you this. So anyway, he's a good guy. He's moving ahead. So
Yeah.
and you'll notice he actually started moving some of the soil,
Yeah.
which was like a dream for me. Except they've lost 3 piles at the front. I'm going, can you?
Yeah.
Anyway, for the first time, about a month ago or so, you were at we got a site plan.
Yeah.
And that's a huge step, because that means as soon as we can approve that site plan, he can sign his deal off with Sobeys and move ahead.
And there's a road allowance there too, right, to get access?
Well, that road allowance we would sell to him, because
Yeah,
it's going
okay.
to be part of the parking lot.
Yeah.
We sold the back road allowance. It
Yeah.
used to be down there,
Yeah.
Division Street. We would,
Remember,
then
yeah.
he would take that as well. So it's one site. So the thought is, if we can get the site plan approved now, hopefully before Christmas, that he can begin to do some RFPs and then get his deal signed with
So
Sobeys.
whose hands is that in, the site plan?
It's in ours right now, but we're still waiting for a bit of input.
From him?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, so when the site plan comes in, 20 questions go back to him.
Yeah.
What about this fence? What about the NOAA? What about he's got to come back and say how he's going to resolve or where this thing's going to be situated.
Okay.
Because it's got to meet 1,000 different rules from 1,000 different agencies,
Okay.
from MTO to the GRCA to all of that. Right. It's a complicated process, but this is one of those ones we sit on at the staff. I'm talking to Robert, the guy doing this thing all the time.
Yeah.
We're trying to move it in. If it moves ahead, and we get the site leveled in the spring, the idea would be to get going late summer next year, shovel in the ground and go.
It's the site plan. So the site plan is the only thing that needs to be approved. It could be done before Christmas.
You could get the site plan approved before Christmas, but there's other iterations. Part of what's going to have to happen now is then you got to go back to the MTO because there's road work.
But MTO is such a pain in the butt. Like MTO could make it last another year.
So that's why
Well, 8 years if you're
that's
looking
been
at-
one of the main difficulties all the way along. So much so,
Why don't you jump on an MTO board?
so much so that I actually got on, and this is, you don't normally do this because MTO staff deal with our staff.
Yeah.
That's how it's done. And I said, having been on these other provincial
Yeah, you
boards,
know.
I know. I got on one of them. I said, bring me on your meeting.
Yeah.
Right. And I explained to the guys how important this was to the community, what we need to do, and how much frustration we've had, and it moved things along. So where I can intervene and do that, we're trying to do that. But ultimately, we're trying to avoid having to go back to the MTO if everything's all kosher. So that there's going to be initial road work. And just as a sidebar, as you know, and before we get into the sewage, a lot of those pipes are from the 70s.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of breaks in the past few years, one
Yeah.
down by the Cenotaph, one over here. Because if you see these pipes,
Yeah.
they were put down on top of gravel.
Yeah.
And if there's a tiny little stone,
Yeah.
as it vibrates over the 80, it starts to
Yeah.
leak.
Yeah.
So if he's pulling the road up to do some work for entrances and stuff to the grocery store, we're going to put in 170 meters of brand new pipe to prevent
The
future.
township is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's much cheaper because we don't have to pay to bring the road up. We
Yeah.
don't have to pay to put it back. We just have to put the pipes in. right?
Yeah.
It's a good chance to level that up. So the only hesitancy I have is we've been at this a while. And
Yeah.
I've said many times, I think we're ready to go ahead and something toes up. So until I see the shovel in the ground,
Yeah.
that's the
And
benchmark.
so
But
you can't give a time, but you know you're close to getting the site plan approval. MTO is always difficult, okay, no matter what.
they may be solved in this particular case, right? So we'll see how this goes.
Let's hope so. Hopefully
Yeah.
somebody from MTO hears this. We need a larger grocery store. So then the owner there, great guy, philanthropic. Part of the problem with him is the fact that he has obviously caught like COVID, and the cost to build goes up. So it doesn't make anything like, fiscally,
Yep.
like the fiscal sense of some of these projects didn't make sense.
Right.
They have started to come down now, so that's a good thing.
Yep.
But everybody at the township level, you probably get questions about this all the time. They want it done. Everybody wants to push it forward. We just don't have a definitive date.
Right. But the cursory one I have now is if the site plan gets through and he goes up for RFP to look at some of the design and stuff,
Yeah.
and he signs his deal with Sobeys, they can finish the site preparation in the spring and put a shovel in the ground.
Will
in
the-
fall
will the
is
site plan-
tentative date.
Will the site plan have anything else other than the Sobeys and the Tim Hortons? Is there going to be commercial or?
And I look at the end of
Give
as far
us
as we know, it's a Sobeys. That's ultimately up to it's probably going to be, but ultimately the guy who owns the property could decide he's going to make it a Loblaws, right? He
Yeah,
could do that.
sure.
But it's
But I guess that
and with regards to the other offsites,
is there other commercial? Would
there will be space for other commercial. So if Tim Hortons was an original discussion, that could be replaced with something else.
Yeah.
That's going to be complete. Just so people understand, remember we talked about zoning. That strip is zoned commercial. You can put restaurants, you can put whatever,
Yeah.
and we cannot discriminate by brand. You can't say I want a Starbucks, not a Timmy's. I want a
I
McDonald's,
think
not an
I
A&W.
think stuff's signed already agreed to with some of those. So
No, I'm just saying
Yeah.
if there will be space for something like that. I think he's planning that. Exactly what it is will be up to him at the end of the day, and we can't come to him and say don't.
no, but I think something like that would benefit the community.
Look, so again, you go back. You think about all the people, youth in the township, and seniors included,
Yeah.
who would love to have a part-time job they can walk to.
Yeah.
This is a walkable little community,
Yes.
right? To a large degree. I know it's a little distant down to the south end, but trying to get your kids to go out for a job when you're living your life is very difficult.
Yeah.
And if you had this thing, I don't know what the hours are, but say it's 7 to 11. You're talking a ton of part-time jobs here and at whatever the other
Yep.
fast food or Timmy or whatever that thing
Yeah.
looks like. It's incredible. And then you think about the convenience for the residents living here. God bless Foodland, we're lucky to have it, but you don't necessarily do your huge shopping there. It's just not, you'll be able to do that here. And then if you go there for that, you might hit the bistro. You might go to the cafe.
Yeah.
You might stay in town, spend your money here.
Yeah.
So this is so critical to us.
Yeah, I think so.
And if
too.
you talk frustrating,
and it'll solve the county, the downtown core stuff as well, because there's more traffic going through there, right? Like, remember we always had that, where's the downtown core of Rockwood? No one really knows.
Well, and
right?
it's some of it's because we're on the highway, some of it's the layout of and we don't have some of the concentric downtowns that places like Elora have, or Niagara-on-the-Lake, right? It's spread out too much. I'm disappointed that plaza, frankly, went in the south end. That was an OMB ruling, by the way. The township of the day fought that subdivision. And then when it went through the OMB, they passed a bylaw, apparently, at the provincial level to put that subdivision in and added that commercial. Yeah. Because that commercial we should have it all in one strip, right?
Well, I still don't mind it, though. And the subdivision, it's kind of one of those things, right?
As we get there. What I'm saying is, considering the fact that we have some empty commercial now, it'd be nice to get that all filled up and clean and then use the south end. I'm not objecting to it. I'm just saying we're stretched now, and now you've stretched it even
for the
farther.
commercial.
Right.
So then, okay, so this will go hand in hand, and we can finish with this.
All right.
The I guess the future of Rockwood, okay, mixed with the sewage. So we just spent $800K deal with the city of Guelph, right? Something like that for sewage.
$800K.
Yeah, or was it $350K? You have
I don't know so let me walk through, and you can tell me where that number falls in.
Okay, so I guess two things. So do you see Rockwood growing? And do you see, like with the sewage, a lot of people don't really understand that the growth in Rockwood is largely determined by sewers
and water.
And sewers and
water.
water.
And that's provincial mandates again, because you don't want to be building subdivisions on septic tanks.
Yes. So tell me more about where you see Rockwood and the sewage. I could have sworn you just.
Well, let me walk through the history, and you can tell me where that number might plug in. I may not know what you're asking.
Yeah.
So in the late 70s, Rockwood apparently is swimming in sewage. Everybody's got septics.
Yes.
And in those days, the ministry used to build these.
Yeah.
So the province comes in and they build this sewer system. And they're going to build it here, as I understand it. And the city comes and says to Rockwood, please don't. We don't want the effluent. So when you have a sewer plant, it cleans it up, drops the water into the river.
Yes.
We don't want that coming down into our drinking water.
Yeah.
And there's limits to the amount of effluent you can put in a river.
Yeah.
So they said to the folks of the day, if you gravity feed it to us, there's a little pumping goes on now, but it's basically gravity fed from Rockwood down to Guelph.
Yeah.
We'll take your sewage, right? And so the council of the day decided fine. And what they had to do, because then they didn't have to build a full plant. They just had to build the bowl.
The transfer or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So it goes and gets pumped down. And anybody driving down towards the Guelph sees the Skyway, the airport, the little airport. On the right side, on the north, you'll see a silver box.
Yeah.
That's related to our sewer system. That's where we enter the city.
Oh,
that's
cool.
where that is.
Okay.
So that's the deal that's made. And if you look at Rockwood, the border was laid out in 1856.
Yeah.
It's a rectangle. So the council of the day went to the city and said, we need a deal to build out Rockwood. That was the deal that was made. And I'm guessing this numbers, but I think it was 1,800 cubic, whatever that is. So when I first got on, we were utilizing about 1,200 cubic, whatever. So we had to go back to the city and say, we want, for all the build out, including lots that haven't been built, like there's 40 lots we go through 40 lots beside TNA.
Yeah.
There's the condominiums left to be done in south of Fernbrook. There's the 7 over by the old bakery.
Yeah.
There's a little bit here and there.
Yeah, there's a couple infill.
So we went there and we said, that's the 1,800 on the original deal. And the city started saying, well, we're going to jack your rates up. We're going to do this. And we actually got into a battle with it. We stopped paying the bill for 4 years.
Yeah.
Because they were going to try to make us responsible for the infrastructure in Guelph as well.
Right.
The underground stuff. And we said, that's not how it works. Rockwood water fees pay for our pipes and underground. We will pay you to take the sewage, and that's the deal. So we wrangled that out. We finished that contract, but that's the maximum we could send to Guelph. So that contract included sending it down, and we gave some money to help build part of their plant.
Okay.
Say we built 5% of their plant or something. That's how that worked. But they're at limits. With the housing demand and the places to grow legislation, Guelph is expected to build 18,000 houses within the next 5-8 years. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And they're at their max. Like they've already got that built out. One of the things we did, there used to be a quarry on the other side of town called Dawe.
Yeah, I remember.
And that was in the middle.
Cliff jump there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So that was in the middle of that was right in the middle of all the apartments that they built up to, but it was in the township.
Yeah.
Whoever did the map was playing silly.
Yeah.
And so you have this thumb.
Yeah.
So we said they wanted
It's funny how that, if you think about it, when you look at it from the
they were
above.
trying to avoid. If it's not in the city, they don't have to deal with it. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what, I don't know what that was. But at the end of the day, we looked at that and we said, we've got houses on Shadow Beach that are shaking because of the quarry. If you're going to shut it down, we'd be happy with it. But we don't have any use for that property.
Yeah.
We don't have sewer and water. We can't do anything with it. Like it doesn't, so we're not going to be pushing. So the city thought, if we can get in, close it, they can use some of that water that the quarry was using for their sewer system, which is good for us because then they need less water from out of the township.
So the quarry is township land.
Was.
Oh, and now
So the deal we made was we let the city annex it into their border,
yeah.
and then they made a deal with the quarry operator to shut it down, who then made a deal with a housing developer. So they're going to put some apartment blocks and stuff in there.
Wow.
Okay, and that's the way the deal works. So we could get the quarry. The city wanted it shut, but we couldn't develop it.
Was there any like aggregate left in there, or was that?
There was a little bit. So we made a deal, and I can't remember that some of this. And this is where you're enclosed, but it's a legal deal. We were paid for I think 15 years worth of potential royalties, and they hadn't got royalties for years because they thought the aquitard was cracked, and so they'd stopped quarrying for a number of years.
Yeah.
So we got royalty, we got potential taxes from that little sliver of land, and then we got a bonus.
Okay.
But they said you can't say. So the township made some good money by swapping that piece of land that we had no use for that we couldn't develop.
Yeah.
Anyway, all of that, the reason I mention that is because the city's got an X amount of housing plan that they've got water availability for, right? They've got limited water in the sense that they can only put so much effluent into the river.
Yeah.
So when their sewer plant reaches capacity, they can't drop any more effluent into the river. Their growth comes to a stop unless they get a pipe from a lake or who knows what they do. So when we're stuck at... we're at our 18 and we look at the city and say, if we want to grow, will you take some more? The answer is no, we don't have any more capacity for you. We can't meet what our targets are.
Yeah.
We've got 18. So you can appreciate and understand that. That's part of the equation. The other part of the equation is you look at Aaron spent 25 years trying to get a system, which they're recently, you're up to $80, $100 million. These are massive undertakings, right? And, and where do you build it? I put it beside your house. I mean, it's a very complicated.
There's no funding, like there's
they
no
get
federal
some. There is
funding
some,
for
and
that.
some of that's changing. They get a bit of money, but typically not. With the more recent pressure around housing, some of these things that have been in the hopper for years are starting to get some funding.
Yeah.
But I'll be frank with you, I think a lot of people that live in Rockwood don't want Milton. That's not why they're here.
and I don't think so either. I mean, I'm a big advocate of development because that's my business.
I can absolutely appreciate
that.
But I think the people living here, nobody's chasing me around and saying, could you please slap in 10 more subdivisions?
Well, and whenever we sell properties that are backing onto a farmer's field, that's the first thing people ask, like, what's going to go there and what's going to go there? And I'm confident explaining the issues with sewers within our community that we are on like we're maxed out right now. So unless Guelph opens up and gives us more sewage, which isn't going to happen or anytime soon, or we have our own sewage treatment plant at the cost of $100 million, we're relatively safe.
To what end, too, right?
Yeah.
So I absolutely appreciate the business you're in, and I get that piece of it. But I think that I see us as a bit of an oasis. And Fergus is now about 30,000 people, center Wellington.
Yeah.
They're going to 62,000 people. They're doubling.
Yeah.
Erin's going from 8,000 to 36,000. So you're becoming, and a lot of folks that move up here or come from Mississauga, Milton, they say, I want to be a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
I think in the long run, that's actually our strength.
Yeah.
As long as we can figure out how to build our commercial industrial tax base to make it sustainable. Because these communities get all those new subdivisions, they get all that new tax.
Yeah.
If we're not doing that, we're not getting that.
That's right.
So you pay a bit of a premium to stay small. That's why a grocery store, for example, from a tax perspective, or a fridge plant, those are good things, right? But you got to maximize the use of those employment lands. And so I think... So does that answer the sewer question?
No.
So where I would take that then, as you asked, vision for Rockwood. I actually think, and you're in real estate, so you may know this better than me, but I think if you've got a really, first of all, we're geographically in a great spot. You can't argue. You can work in Kitchener, you can work in Mississauga, get to the airport.
Yeah.
Right, 45 minutes on a good day. We've got lots of school. We got 4 schools, and within shot. And one of the boards I sat on at AMO, they were closing rural schools. Right? People don't. That's a real big deal.
And that's kind of neat too, because when I grew up, there was only one school. Well, 2, because you had the Eramosa public school.
So you got the 4 schools. You've got, assuming the grocery store goes ahead, you've got all the small services of a thing. You've got the conservation area. And in our township, the 4,000-acre Guelph Lake, that's in our township as well. Yeah. Right? So that's all part of this community. So you've got this wonderful place to live. We don't, there's some crime, but it's not, we're not urban crime. It's pretty good. One of the tests I have in place, because I've traveled quite a bit, is if you're walking down the street and someone's passing you, you nod. You say hi. We still do that. Yeah. That's a big deal. And you want to keep that quaintness. And I think that if you've got limited housing inventory here, and you've got all the advantages that this community has, it becomes a destination. In the next 50, 25, maybe sooner, because as people want to live out here, but they don't want to live in the middle of a subdivision, you find this quaint little place to live. And if we can help support the downtown to get a few more conveniences and shops down there, I think this is going to be the place to be. I'm not blowing smoke. I'm not going to.
No.
I mean, who knows how long I'm here?
I think you're right, because some of the things that people talk about with Rockwood, like the biggest downside is there's nothing here. Okay, the biggest upside, there's nothing here.
But what does that mean? What does that mean? So if you're talking about services, you've got most of the basic services.
Well, most of it for us is anybody that comes out. We mentioned it at the start of this podcast. At the beginning, when people come here, you're like, what do we do for eat around here? Where do we go here? Where do we go? So for me, the biggest objections that I see is the same thing that people like about Rockwood. It's the same thing that brings people here.
Because if you're talking about, and listen, I recognize there's been discussions around arenas and stuff. We could have a whole different conversation.
That's what we want. We want an arena.
But what we've tried to do, recognizing as a municipality, we've tried to take advantage of the properties that we do own. For example, the medical centers on municipal property. That park, it took us a number of years, and again, going to ministries, part of relationships, we had to move the urban border.
Yeah.
To move
push it back.
Bonner's homes off the tracks, which is great for the homeowners. Yeah. I know they can still hear it, but they're back.
Yeah.
And added 22 acres to the park, which added in enough soccer fields so we can do tournaments now.
Yeah.
So they might go to the bit for wings.
You guys have done a great job with that park.
And so it's
one of the best parks in Wellington County.
Well, thank you. And so we did the older adult center. Yeah. We used to have a conflict between the youth and the adults in that little back room. So as opposed to kicking one out, the county leases that building, so we jacked up the county's lease and we added that other room. So now the library is a full room and a room for the kids, and now you have the older adult center. Yeah. And those are little services that we have, right? And all this stuff, and the pickleball we're going to put in. So there's really quite a bit to do here if you look for adults. Now for youth, it's difficult because, but again, Guelph is fairly close by for some of those youth activities.
And Acton, right?
Well, so you could say maybe we don't have a full spectrum of restaurants and stuff, but I think part of the idea behind the grocery store and improving the downtown and supporting the commercial corridor is to build some of that up. And that's why I say long term, and maybe short to long term, this is going to be how do you beat this small 200-acre conservation area, great downtown, great people, friendly people, right? All of it. And all these amenities. And then if you really need this to get to an arena or something, they're close by. Right?
Yeah.
So we're doing what we can with the money that we have. We also recognize there's tax fatigue, right? So you got to keep things within payable.
And you got to watch your budgets. But for you then, okay, in closing, where are you? Are we going to see mayor here for the next foreseeable future? What do we see with you?
I'm closer to the end than the beginning of this.
Okay.
Clearly, I've been.
How many years have you been mayor?
2006.
Holy.
Yeah. But,
what's that, 19 years, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of small town mayors have been around. I worked with a guy on Roma who was there for like 40 years. Not saying they should do that. Yeah. Not saying there isn't always opportunities for change. Not saying there isn't. But I think if we're doing the job and we're doing a pretty good, best job we can be doing, and we're not, we're moving the township forward, change is good at sometimes, and at other times things are working relatively, right? But there will be
you would stay living in Rockwood?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? I'm down here in this house beside the school. I got a 66-foot lot. Remember, I came out of Toronto.
Yeah, right? 66 by 132.
One of the little things that makes this place great, and I'll go to this. You can have a little fire pit in your backyard, right? Now, maybe if you're in a tight lot condominium, you can't do it because of the smoke. Yeah. I can't do that in Toronto. You can't even have a fire in your backyard in Guelph.
Yeah.
I remember the fire department came out to us and said, you need to ban backyard fires. We said, that's why we're here. We're rural. Nobody burned a house down because they had weenies in their backyard.
Yeah.
So why would I stay here? Because I get all the urban stuff that I really need is within reach if I have to. but I get that small town rural living, little fire in my backyard. I know all my neighbors.
Yeah.
That's not true in large urban areas. It just isn't, right? Everybody's watching out for everybody, and you know that if something happened, everybody would come out and help.
Yeah, they do.
It's that old-fashioned, pioneering kind of whatever it is. So it's a great place to raise kids. It's a great place to live. As other places become more difficult, Toronto is much different than when I was a kid. You can let your kids go off and play in the forest by the school, and you're not that worried about it.
Yeah.
But in some urban environments, where are you? What do you like? Right? So there's a lot of advantages to being here. So for me, I've enjoyed doing the job. I hope I've done some good things.
Thanks for being here. It's a hell of a career, man.
Appreciate
Chris,
it.
thank you very much.